Chapter 81. Yi Xing and Yi Feng rode their horses and stopped in front of the Yi clan. Yi Feihong immediately walked up quickly and helped Yi Xing hold the reins. It was not because Yi Xing had made a meteoric rise that Yi Feihong, as a father, would hold the reins for Yi Xing. No matter how glorious Yi Xing was, there was one thing that would not change. He was always Yi Xing's father. No matter what, he did not need to lower himself in front of Yi Xing. It was just that Yi Feihong felt guilty towards Yi Xing. He wanted to make up for the relationship with Yi Xing. Holding the reins was purely an instinctive action. Xing, in the history of my Qingye village Ye family, no one has ever entered the Zishan Academy, let alone the Zishan Academy's gifted class. You have such achievements today, father is extremely happy. I am proud of you. The entire Qingye village Ye family is proud of you. Yi Feihong's expression was happy but also ashamed. His tone was excited. Xing, you can have such achievements today. It is all the result of your own efforts. Father is very ashamed. I did not train you well before, I feel guilty towards you. Yi Xing jumped down from the horse's back and did not let Yi Feihong take the reins. He smiled indifferently and said, "The past is like smoke. Let it go with the wind. I did not take it to heart." Father, you do not need to take it to heart. Xing, Lu Yi followed beside Yi Feihong. Looking at Yi Xing's excited expression, she was happy but also ashamed. She did not know what to say. At this time, Yi Feng was also talking with his parents. They had not seen each other for several months. Naturally, they missed each other. Compared to the relationship between Yi Xing and his parents, the relationship between Yi Feng and his parents was much more harmonious. Yi Xing. Young Master Yi Xing. Young Master Yi Xing. The other members of the Ye family also walked up. At this moment, Yi Xing was naturally the center of attention. Whether it was the elders, seniors, or juniors, they were all extremely respectful to Yi Xing. When they looked at Yi Xing, their eyes were filled with pride and excitement. The two horses were led away by the Ye family members. Yi Xing was respectfully welcomed back into the Yi residence. The Ye family had already set up a banquet. Everyone gathered together and naturally, it was a celebration. After the banquet, Yi Xing urged everyone in the Ye family to leave. Yi Xing returned to the main hall with his parents and called Yi Fighting over, accompanied by Yi Feng. Yi Xing, ever since you were injured, I realized that you were different. You would have a bright future ahead of you. But who would have thought that you would have such a bright future ahead of you? Even your grandfather can't compare to you. When they arrived at the main hall, Yi Fighting was still praising Yi Xing. Yi Xing glanced at Yi Feng beside Yi Fighting and said, "Uncle, don't just talk about me. Yi Feng's performance in the main family is also extraordinary. He is now the #1 ordinary disciple in the Ye family. With his strength, he can even challenge the elite disciples." Because Yi Xing had always been the center of attention, Yi Feng did not receive much attention after returning home. He only talked to his parents and spent most of his time talking about Yi Xing's achievements. Therefore, Yi Fighting did not know about Yi Feng's performance in the main family. When he heard Yi Xing's words, he was shocked and said happily, "What? Feng is already the #1 ordinary disciple?" After all, Yi Feng was his son. Knowing that Yi Feng was successful, Yi Fighting was naturally even happier. Although he was asking about Yi Xing, his gaze was already on Yi Feng, revealing a strong sense of surprise. Yi Feng showed a little pride on his face. He nodded and said, "Yes, I'm already at the peak of the 4th layer. However, compared to Brother Xing, my achievements are nothing. Furthermore, it's all thanks to Brother Xing that I was able to reach the peak of the 4th layer so quickly." Yi Feng's confirmation made Yi Fighting even happier. As a father, what could make him happier than his son being successful? Although it could not be compared to Yi Xing's achievements, Yi Feng was already at the peak of the 4th rank in the main family and became the #1 ordinary disciple after entering the main family for 3 months. This was already very good progress. Hearing Yi Feng say that it was all thanks to Yi Xing's help, Yi Fighting was very grateful to Yi Xing. He asked, "Yi Xing's help? What did he help you with?" Yi Feng said, "Brother Xing gave me 5 blood dike." Lu Yi was still fine. She did not know what blood dike was, but Yi Feihong and Yi Fighting were both shocked. They said in shock, "High-grade medicinal herb blood dike." Lu Yi was also shocked when she learned that blood dike was a high-grade medicinal herb. High-grade medicinal herbs were incomparably precious in the main Ya family. They could only be found by chance. For the Ya family in Qingya village, it was simply a treasure that only existed in legends. At this time, Yi Xing had already taken out the remaining 15 blood dike and distributed them to Yi Feihong, Lu Yi, and Yi Fighting. Each of them had 5. Yi Xing said, "Father, mother, uncle, I obtained some blood dike in the Qingyun mountain range. I gave some to the main family and 5 to Yi Feng. These 15 are for you. Each of you can take 5 at once. With your cultivation, you can take them all at once. It has a great effect on your cultivation and body refining technique." Yi Feihong, Lu Yi, and Yi Fighting looked at the 5 blood dike in their hands. They were almost petrified. The rumored high-grade medicinal herbs were in their hands. It made them feel like they were in a dream. They could not believe that this was the truth. 5 blood dike can't let father's cultivation reach the 6th level of the martial path, but it's enough to reach the peak of the 5th level. Moreover, it's enough for him to reach the 5th level of the martial path. Mother and uncle are both at the peak of the 4th level. With 5 blood dike, it's enough to raise your cultivation to the 5th level of the martial path. Yi Xing's words made the 3 of them return to reality from their dreamlike state. The 3 of them were incomparably happy. With their age, it would be difficult for them to improve their cultivation in this lifetime. However, they could continue to break through with the blood dike. "Xing, these 15 blood dike should be quite useful to you." Yi Feihong looked at Yi Xing. Although the blood dike was very beneficial to him, he was not willing to take up Yi Xing's resources. In the past, he was not willing to give Yi Xing cultivation resources because it would be a waste for Yi Xing to use them. Now, he felt that using the blood dike on himself was also a waste. He might as well give it to Yi Xing to raise his cultivation. Yi Xing waved his hand and said, "I've already eaten more than 30 blood dike in the Azure Cloud Mountain range. Eating more won't have any effect. You guys take it tonight and try to raise your cultivation as soon as possible." Yi Xing actually ate more than 30 blood dike, which made the 3 of them secretly speechless. They also understood in their hearts that it was no wonder that Yi Xing's cultivation progressed so quickly. Yi Feihong and the other 2 simultaneously consumed 5 blood dike and sat cross-legged in the hall to refine and absorb them. Yi Xing asked Yi Feng to bring a brush and ink. He had already cultivated all his middle-grade martial arts to perfection. He was prepared to write down a few of them for the Ya family's collection in Azure Leaf Village. With his attainments, the martial arts he wrote were all complete versions. Furthermore, it was accompanied by his cultivation experience. It would allow others to take fewer detours. Just like how he gave pointers to Yi Feng on his martial arts, causing Yi Feng's martial arts attainments to far surpass other ordinary disciples. Even some elite disciples would find it difficult to compare with Yi Feng. Yi Feihong and the other 2 had stepped into the martial arts path for more than 30 years. Their cultivation was very stable. They could naturally bear to eat 5 blood dike at the same time. About 4 hours later, the 3 of them had refined and absorbed the blood dike in their bodies. They all had great progress. Yi Feihong's cultivation had reached the peak of the 5th rank. Lu Yi and Yi Fighting's cultivation had both broken through the 5th rank. They had even consolidated to the middle of the 5th rank. The three's middle-grade body refining techniques had all reached the small success stage. They did not directly reach the large success stage because the middle-grade body refining techniques they cultivated were incomplete. Yixing gave a few middle-grade martial arts to Yi Feihong. Among them were the complete middle-grade body refining techniques. After the three of them cultivated, they would soon be able to raise the middle-grade body refining techniques to the large success stage. Yixing also gave the 500,000 taels of silver notes he obtained from the masked man to Yi Feihong. To the Ya family in Azure Leaf Village, this was not a small sum of money. It could be used to develop the family. Yixing could only temporarily help the Ya family in Azure Leaf Village with this. It was not that he was unwilling to leave the high-grade cultivation techniques behind. It was just that the Azure Leaf Village Yi clan did not have the ability to cultivate high-grade cultivation techniques. If he left behind a good cultivation technique, it would only be harmful and not beneficial. Yixing and the other two were extremely surprised to have a complete middle-grade body refining technique to cultivate. That night, the three of them naturally had to learn it first. Then, they continued to refine the remaining medicinal power in their bodies. Yixing and Yifeng returned to their own residences to rest. The next morning, Yixing woke up and went to the backyard of the patriarch's courtyard to begin his morning practice. Looking at the familiar backyard and recalling the time when he cultivated here, Yixing could not help but sigh in his heart. It had already been a long time since he came to the Star Continent, and he already had memories of it. This place was his starting point in the Star Continent. It had beautiful memories. However, after leaving this time, he would not be able to return for a long time. After entering the Purple Mountain Academy, he could not leave for the first 3 years. Yixing sat down on a blue stone that he often sat on to cultivate. He circulated the Qingyuan art and began to cultivate. In his faintly discernible perception, the sky above Yixing seemed to have turned into a pitch-black starry sky. The outline of a huge dark star was faintly discernible. The surging power of the stars fell from the sky and poured into Yixing's body. It was quickly absorbed by Yixing. While his internal strength strengthened, the 5th star ring in his dantian became even more resplendent. When Yixing was cultivating in the backyard of the patriarch's courtyard, a few unfriendly guests came to the Ya family of Azure Leaf Village. One of them was an old man who was over 60 years old. Half of his hair was white, but his eyes were shining brightly. His entire person revealed a terrifying aura. This was the Xiong family's elder, Xiong Yang. Xiong Yang's cultivation was at the peak of the 6th stage of the martial path. If a martial master did not appear, there would be very few martial artists below the 7th stage who could be his opponent. Even in Azure Sky City, Xiong Yang was a well-known figure. Compared to the Ya family of Azure Leaf Village, if Yi Tiannan was still alive 3 years ago, he would still be able to contend with Xiong Yang. But now, Xiong Yang was a terrifying expert that could not be defeated. Xiong Yang brought a few people to the Ya family of Azure Leaf Village. He brought up the battle agreement he made with Yi Tiannan 10 years ago. As the patriarch of the Xiong family of Wuiyang Town, he wanted to have a life-and-death battle with the patriarch of the Ya family of Azure Leaf Village. Chapter 82. Greenleaf Village, Ya family's guest hall. Yi Feihong's face was very ugly. His father, Yi Tiannan, had already passed away 3 years ago. Who in Azure Sky City's martial arts world didn't know about this? But today, Xiong Yang brought people to Greenleaf Village's Ya family and brought up the arranged battle with Yi Tiannan 10 years ago. This was clearly bullying and even disregarding the dignity of the deceased. Other than Xiong Yang, the other people were also 6th-level martial artists. They were all the family heads of Azure Sky City's martial arts families. There was also a Wei family elder who had a good personal relationship with Xiong Yang. These people were all top figures in Azure Sky City's martial arts world. They were all existences that far surpassed the Ya family in Greenleaf Village. Elder Xiaoyang, a dead man is important. My father had already passed away 3 years ago. Today, you bring up the old matter again. Aren't you disrespecting my father? Yi Feihong's expression was unhappy. But the other party's strength was too strong. He didn't dare to really lose his temper. He said, "You are a well-known figure in Azure Sky City. If this matter was known by others, it would also damage Elder Xiaoyang's reputation." Yi Feihong was very sullen. Xiaoyang was Yi Tiannan's life enemy. Wuyang Village was just beside Greenleaf Village. The two of them had fought since they were young. If Yi Tiannan was still alive and Xiaoyang came, how could he be allowed to enter the house? But now, as Yi Tiannan's son, Yi Feihong had no choice but to suppress his anger in front of Xiaoyang. He. Xiaoyang sneered. His face revealed a mocking expression. He said, "This old man and Yi Tiannan have been enemies for life. No matter if he is alive or dead, I will step on him and hurt him. Why should I respect him?" You. Yi Feihong's expression changed. He didn't expect Xiaoyang to be so excessive. In the guest hall, several elders of the Ya family of Greenleaf Village were also furious. Yi Tiannan was the legend of the Ya family in Greenleaf Village. He was the glory of the Ya family in Greenleaf Village. Now that he had been dead for only 3 years, he was trampled on. As a member of the Ya family, how could they swallow this? However, Xiaoyang didn't put the Ya family in his eyes at all. He continued, "Yi Tiannan used to be the head of the Ya family in Greenleaf Village and challenged me, the head of the Xiong family in Wuyang Town. Now that the short-lived Yi Tiannan is dead, is there still a head of the Ya family in Greenleaf Village? Come, head of the Ya family, inherit your father's will and have a battle of life and death with this old man, how about it?" Even though Yi Feihong was furious, he couldn't help but change his expression. Although he used the 5 blood dams given by Yi Xing last night to raise his cultivation to the peak of the 5th stage, Xiaoyang was a peak 6th stage martial artist. Under the martial Dao master level, there were very few people who could contend with Xiaoyang. The strength of the two were not on the same level. If Yi Feihong were to have a battle of life and death with Xiaoyang, it would be suicide. Ha 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 ha. Xiaoyang laughed loudly. His laughter was extremely sarcastic. He loudly said, "Yeah, family head, it seems like you don't dare. That's right, with your mediocre skills, if you dare to duel with me, this old man can easily kill you. Moreover, the duel is between your father and me. Sending you to your death is indeed a bit too much." When Xiaoyang spoke, he deliberately used his inner strength. His voice traveled far and wide. The Ya family in Greenleaf Village wasn't very big. Most of the Ya family members could hear Xiaoyang's laughter. Yi Xing was in the backyard of the patriarch's residence, so he naturally heard it even more clearly. Xiaoyang deliberately used his inner strength to speak. His purpose was to let Yi Xing hear it. If he didn't draw out Yi Xing, then everything he did would be meaningless. Xiaoyang continued to laugh loudly. "Yi Tiannan, after your death, there is no one left in Greenleaf Village's Yi clan. Now that the 10-year agreement has come to an end, since no one from your Greenleaf Village's Yi clan dares to fight me to the death, then this old man can only dig up your grave and whip your corpse to fulfill the 10-year agreement. You dare!" Yi Feihong angrily roared and suddenly stood up. He was extremely angry. If Xiaoyang came to slap his face, Yi Feihong could still swallow his anger. However, digging Yi Tiannan's grave and whipping his corpse was something that he absolutely could not tolerate. Even if he died, he must stop Xiaoyang. In the guest hall, several elders of the Ya family also stood up and took out their weapons. Although some of them were only at the 4th stage of the martial path, they were forced to fight to the death. Not to mention Yi Feihong and the elders in the guest hall, the entire Ya family, as long as they heard Xiaoyang's voice, were incomparably angry. It was as if their hearts were ignited with explosives. Digging someone's grave and whipping their corpse, this was one of the world's greatest humiliation. Especially since Yi Tianan was a legend of Greenleaf Village's Ya family. This kind of humiliation was unbearable. Why wouldn't this old man dare? Just based on your Greenleaf Village's Ya family, who can stop me? Facing the rage of Yi Feihong and the others, Xiaoyang's face still had a disdainful smile. He loudly said, "Today, there are several friends from Azure Sky City's martial arts world who are here to testify that the 10-year battle between Yi Tianan and me has arrived. Even if he has already become a corpse, he must still be dug out from his grave and receive this old man's move. Unless your Greenleaf Village's Ya family has a living person who can replace Yi Tianan and fight this old man to the death, or else, this old man will whip his corpse today. Old man, I, Yi Xing, will fight you." Xiaoyang's voice just fell and Yi Feihong didn't even have time to open his mouth before a thunderous shout came from outside the Ya family's guest hall. Everyone turned to look. A 16 or 17-year-old youth with a longbow and a quiver of arrows on his back stood at the entrance of the guest hall. It was Yi Xing. Even if Yi Xing was a transmigrator and didn't have any feelings towards his grandfather Yi Tianan whom he had never met, Xiaoyang's attitude still made him very angry. Moreover, he could also hear from Xiaoyang's words that Xiaoyang's true purpose was to find him for a life-and-death duel. Otherwise, he wouldn't have repeatedly reminded the Ya family of Greenleaf Village to have a living person replace Yi Xing to fight him. The other party was a member of the Xiong family. When they came to Greenleaf Village, the Ya family was arrogant. How could Yi Xing let the other party have an easy time? A life-and-death duel. That was exactly what Yi Xing wanted. Seeing Yi Xing, Xiaoyang's eyes suddenly revealed an expression of having his wish fulfilled. He laughed mischievously. Even though Xiaoyang really wanted to have a life-and-death duel with Yi Xing's seniority was too far from his. In order to avoid people saying that he bullied the younger generation, Xiaoyang pretended to be cold and arrogant and said, "How could a mere junior have the qualifications to fight with this old man? This old man had better dig up Yi Tianan's grave and whip his corpse, so as to avoid people saying that this old man is deliberately bullying the younger generation." From Xiaoyang's point of view, he wanted to dig up Yi Xing's grave. This was the same as grabbing the neck of the Ya family of Greenleaf Village. It was impossible for Yi Xing not to duel with him, so he pretended to be cold and arrogant and refused. He wanted to wait for Yi Xing's repeated requests to have a life-and-death duel with him. Then, he would avoid difficulties and kill Yi Xing. However, Yi Xing was too lazy to play around with Xiaoyang. He didn't say any more nonsense and directly took out the dragon tendon bow. Then, he took out a black-edge arrow. Knocking the arrow, drawing the bow. Yi Xing had already said that he would have a life-and-death duel with Xiaoyang, so he wouldn't waste his breath a second time. Xiaoyang came to Greenleaf Village's Ya family and his conduct was too much of a bully. Yi Xing was too lazy to find another place to duel. Since it was a life-and-death duel, everything was for the purpose of killing the opponent. It could be carried out anytime and anywhere. Yi Xing held the bow and arrow in his hand. At this moment, he was going to kill Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang originally wanted to put on a show of his status, but Yi Xing directly drew the bow. His face immediately changed and he became serious. Speaking of which, Yi Xing's strength was already considered to be in the upper echelons of 6th-stage martial artists. Xiaoyang didn't dare to look down on him too much, especially when Yi Xing's hand was holding a bow and arrow. Before Xiaoyang came to Greenleaf Village, Xiong Baotian had specifically reminded him to pay attention to Yi Xing's archery. He couldn't duel with Yi Xing too far away, so that Yi Xing wouldn't have the opportunity to use the bow and arrow. Because Xiong Baotian was a martial Dao master, being injured by Yi Xing's bow and arrow was too shameful. Xiong Baotian didn't talk too much about Yi Xing's archery. Moreover, Xiong Baotian also attributed his previous injury to his own carelessness. So although he reminded Xiong Yang that Yi Xing's archery was powerful, he didn't say it was too terrifying. As a result, Xiong Yang didn't pay enough attention to it. If Xiong Yang knew that Yi Xing's current archery had reached the point where he could kill a martial Dao master, and had already successfully killed a martial Dao master, he would definitely not have such an attitude when he saw Yi Xing use the bow and arrow. When the arrow tip locked onto Xiong Yang immediately felt a sense of death. At this time, he felt that Yi Xing with the bow and arrow seemed to be a little scary. However, it was already too late. Wu Shixing drew the bow and shot the arrow in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Xiong Yang had already pulled out his treasured saber, and his body was about to rush towards Yi Xing. However, the speed of the black peak arrow, which contained the power of the wind, was obviously faster than Xiong Yang expected. The treasured saber swung out and cut through the air. And the black peak arrow that left the bowstring had already pierced through Xiong Yang's throat in less than half a blink of an eye. A martial artist at the peak of LV6 was extremely powerful. Without a martial Dao master, there were very few martial artists in the entire Celestial Ocean City who could contend against him. However, he couldn't withstand Yi Xing's arrow. Being killed by Yi Xing's arrow might be because Yi Xing's direct attack was somewhat unexpected to Xiong Yang, but it was definitely not the main reason. Even martial Dao master Yi Xing could kill him. Even if Xiong Yang was fully focused and vigilant, so what? Under Yi Xing's arrow, he couldn't escape death as well. In the Ya family's guest hall, whether it was the guests in the LV6 martial Dao realm, Yi Feihong, or the family elders, they were all dumbfounded at this moment. Yi Xing and Xiong Yang's duel to the death lasted for too short a time. They were still shocked that Yi Xing suddenly drew the bow and started a battle in the guest hall, but the battle ended in the blink of an eye. Clang! Xiong Yang's treasured saber fell to the ground. He raised his hand to cover his throat, his eyes filled with disbelief. The arrow pierced through his throat so quickly that Xiong Yang didn't even feel the pain. However, blood kept flowing out from his fingers. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop the blood from flowing out. Xiong Yang opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he couldn't make a sound. His eyes remained in a state of disbelief as his body fell backward and fell to the ground. Born in the Xiong family branch, he became one of the strongest elders in the Xiong family below the martial Dao master level. Xiong Yang's life could only be described with 4 words: limitless glory. Whether it was Xiong Yang himself or anyone else, they probably never expected that his life would end like this. Chapter 83. In the Yi family's guest hall, there was complete silence. Not a single sound could be heard. Xiong Yang's corpse fell to the ground. Fresh blood flowed out of the wound in his throat, dyeing the floor red. Looking at Xiong Yang's dead body, the other level 6 martial artists who came with Xiong Yang were all trembling with fear and trepidation. The Ya family's Feihong and the other elders were all shocked beyond words. The outcome in front of them left them dumbfounded. Just a moment ago, Xiong Yang was still laughing arrogantly, treating the Ya family of Qingya village as if they were nothing. Now, he had turned into a corpse. This turn of events was simply too fast. It was hard for them to react. Yi Xing held the dragon tendon bow and walked into the guest hall. The level 6 martial artists looked at him with fear in their eyes. They couldn't help but hold their breaths. The few of you came with this person. Yi Xing walked to the side of Xiong Yang's corpse and asked the level 6 martial artists. No, no. The few of them quickly shook their heads and waved their hands. One of them said nervously, "We were invited by Xiong Yang to be witnesses. We didn't do anything. We're just here to go through the motions, to be witnesses, to be witnesses." These few people's cultivation ranged from mid-stage level 6 to pinnacle level 6. None of them could compare to Xiong. Even Xiong throat was pierced by Yixing's arrow. The few of them looked at Yixing holding the bow and arrow. Which one of them wasn't scared witless? They were afraid that Yixing would suddenly shoot an arrow at them too. Therefore, even though they were all level 6 martial artists in their 50s and were all family heads and elders of the big families in Tiansang City, they were extremely nervous in front of Yixing. Although these few people didn't do anything, Yixing didn't have a good impression of them just because they came together with Xiong. Yixing's sharp gaze swept across the faces of these people one by one. He said indifferently, "What have you all witnessed?" Several people glanced at Xiong corpse and sighed in their hearts. Yixing possessed such terrifying archery skills. Xiong actually dared to come to Qingye village to cause trouble for the Ya family. He was simply courting death. They all knew Xiong purpose. He wanted to force Yixing to have a duel to the death with him. Things went as Xiong expected. Yixing and he had a duel to the death, but the result was that Xiong was killed by Yixing in the blink of an eye. When they thought about it now, they felt that it was ridiculous. The laughable one was Xiong. He didn't even know the strength of his opponent, yet he forced his opponent into a life-and-death duel. The result was that he was easily trampled to death like an ant. Xiong and young Master Yi had a duel to the death. Unfortunately, Xiong skills were not as good as young Master Ye's and he was killed by young Master Ye's arrow. Xiong attitude was arrogant. He wanted to dig up people's graves. His behavior was vile. Young Master Yi accepted the 10-year duel on behalf of grandfather and shot Xiong. It's fair and square. Xiong was arrogant and brought about his own destruction. Facing Yixing's question, several people quickly answered. Coming to Qingye village to be witnesses for the Ya family was something that would offend the main Ya family. For these people to come, it showed that their relationship with Xiong was indeed good. But at this time, they didn't dare to say anything good about Xiong. They all said that Xiong was useless and Yixing was incomparably high. Yixing felt satisfied with their answers. He waved his hand outside and said, "The Ya family doesn't welcome you. Everyone, please leave. Remember what you said today. If in the future you defame my Qingye village Ya family, I will visit you one by one." Yes, yes. Young Master Yi, we will leave. Xiong corpse was next to them. They felt uncomfortable looking at it and didn't want to stay. Yixing ordered them to leave. They naturally left immediately. In the guest hall, Yi Feihong looked at Yixing and then looked at Xiong corpse on the ground. After the shock, he was incomparably happy. Good. Good, Xing you killed him well. Yi Feihong said excitedly. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill Xiong. It was just that he didn't have the strength. If he had Yixing's ability, how could he allow Xiong to be arrogant in the Ya family for so long? He would have been killed long ago. Several elders looked at Xiong corpse and were also emotional. One of them said excitedly, Tian Nan Duke and Xiong fought for a lifetime and couldn't completely defeat each other. Today, this thief died in the Ya family, died in the hands of Tian Nan Duke's descendant. Tian Nan Duke can laugh in the underworld. Yi Feihong and several elders were very happy, but Yixing frowned slightly. Xiong family. He muttered in his heart, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Yixing originally thought that after he became a student of the Purple Mountain Academy's genius class, his former enemies would be apprehensive of his identity. Any hatred would be reduced to a small matter, and small matters would be resolved. As someone who came from Earth, Yixing didn't have too much killing intent, and didn't have the thought of killing them all. However, whether it was being chased by Yi Weining's assassins on the way back, or being forced by Xiong arranged by the Xiong family in Qingye village, he had learned 2 lessons in a row. Enemies must be completely annihilated, or else one would be harmed. If it wasn't for Yixing's strong archery skills, he would have died in the hands of the assassins on the way back. This was a big lesson. Yi Weining, Xiong family, if I don't teach them a lesson, they will only become worse. I have to get rid of this problem as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the Ya family in Qingye village will be implicated. Today's matter is an example. Yixing thought. Originally, he wanted to stay in Qingye village for 1 more day and return to Celestial City tomorrow, but now he changed his mind. He wanted to return to Celestial City immediately and settle all his grudges before heading to the Purple Mountain Academy. Since he had made a decision, he had to implement it immediately. Yixing said, "Father, I want to return to Celestial City immediately. Dispose of this old man's body, but leave his head. I will bring it back to Celestial City and return it to the Xiong family." Since the Xiong family sent Xiong Yang to kill him, then he would bring Xiong Yang's head to the Xiong family and let them see who killed who. Hearing that Yixing wanted to fight with the Xiong family, Yi Feihong couldn't help but worry. "Xing, you want to deal with the main Xiong family? You have a bright future ahead of you, why are you in such a hurry?" The main Xiong family has a 7th grade martial Dao master. Yixing smiled faintly and said, "Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Since Yixing said so, Yi Feihong didn't say anything else. He personally removed Xiong Yang's head and placed it in a bag, handing it to Yixing. The corpse was then carried away for cremation. Yixing took Xiong Yang's head and quickly bid farewell to the Ya family with Yifeng and returned to Celestial City. At noon, the 2 of them had already rushed back to the main Ya family. After returning to the main Ya family, Yixing's first stop wasn't to return the horse to the horse farm, but to Yi Weining's residence. Yifeng naturally followed Yixing. His expression was a little nervous and excited. He knew what Yixing was going to do next and had already told him on the way back to Celestial City. The main Ya family, Weining courtyard, was Yi Weining's courtyard. In the courtyard's guest hall, Yi Weining was playing Go with an old man over the age of 50. Ever since yesterday, Yi Weining contacted the Dark Knight organization and paid half the reward of 500,000 taels of silver to hire assassins from the Dark Knight organization to kill Yixing. His heart had been in a suspended state, feeling very uneasy. Especially last night, he didn't receive any news from the Dark Knight organization. He didn't know if the assassination of Yixing was a success or a failure. As a result, he was a little absent-minded when playing Go today. The old man opposite Yi Weining was called Yuan Chao. He was also an elder of the Ya family. His cultivation was similar to Yi Weining's, and the 2 of them were Go friends. Yuan Chao placed down a piece and won another game. Today, he had already won 3 games in a row. He couldn't help but ask, "Brother Weining, your Go skills have deteriorated today. I see that you're a little absent-minded. What's bothering you?" Yi Weining sighed. How could he tell an outsider what was bothering him? He said, "Last night, I dreamed of Sun Yunкong. Alas, when I woke up today, I felt extremely lost. I really don't have the heart to play Go today. Why don't we stop here?" "That's fine. When Brother Weining's mentality is better, we'll play again." Yuan Chao stood up and said, "Brother Weining, there are always things that don't go your way in life. The dead are gone. Don't hurt your body because of this." Yi Weining nodded and said, "Brother Wen Chao, I'll give you a ride. Let's go out and get some fresh air." Although the main Ya family occupied a large area, Yixing and Yi Weining soon arrived outside Yi Weining's residence. Yixing reined in his horse and stopped. With his X-ray vision, he saw that Yi Weining and Yuan Chao were walking out of the courtyard. "Take this first." Yixing threw Xiong Yang's head to Yifeng. Then, he took out the dragon tendon bow and the black peak arrow. Just as Yi Weining walked out of the courtyard, he felt a terrifying murderous intent. He looked over and saw Yi Xing on horseback pointing an arrow at him. His expression changed greatly. Yi Weining, seeing me come back alive, are you surprised? Yi Xing smiled faintly. Yi Weining's shocked expression immediately disappeared. He forced himself to be calm and said, Yi Xing, what do you want to do? You dare to kill an elder in the family. Yi Wenchao and Yi Weining had a good relationship. Seeing Yi Xing pointing an arrow at Yi Weining, Yi Wenchao also shouted angrily, impudent. Yi Xing, even if you were accepted into the Purple Mountain Academy as a student of the gifted class, you can't behave so atrociously in the family. Yi Xing's expression turned cold. He said coldly, what? Only Yi Weining can hire assassins to kill me, but I can't fight back. What? Yi Wenchao was shocked and his expression changed greatly. Yi Xing's current status was no small matter. Killing him would have serious consequences. Yi Weining's expression changed even more than Yi Wenchao's. His mind buzzed. He only imagined the terrifying consequences and ignored the crisis in front of him. Whoosh! At this moment, Yi Xing drew his bow and released a black peak arrow that pierced through the air. The arrow was infused with a trace of wind, so its speed was shocking. Yi Weining was stunned and could not react in time. Naturally, he had the same result as Xiong Yang. The black peak arrow instantly pierced his throat. You! Yi Weining had just spoken, but he could no longer speak. He pointed at Yi Xing with one hand and covered his bleeding throat with the other. He looked unwilling and fell backwards. Chapter 84. Seeing Yi Weining fall to the ground, Yi Wenchao's hair stood on end and his back was drenched in cold sweat. Yi Weining was an elder of the clan just like him. Moreover, in terms of cultivation and status, he was superior to Yi Wenchao. Yi Weining was still playing chess with Yi Wenchao a moment ago, but now he had turned into a corpse. Yi Wenchao could not help but feel sad for him. Yi Wenchao pointed at Yi Xing with his trembling finger and said, You've got guts. Without any evidence, you dared to shoot an elder of the clan. Do you still have any respect for the clan? Without evidence. Yi Xing reached into his bosom and took out the cloth scroll he found on the masked assassin's body. He said, Yi Weining drew this personally. I found it on the assassin's body. The evidence is conclusive. Yi Wenchao said angrily, even if Elder Weining was in the wrong, as an elder of the clan, it's not up to you to decide his life and death. You have to report it to the clan and let the clan leader and other elders decide. Yi Wenchao was also an elder of the clan. He did not want to have the same fate as Yi Weining, being shot to death without going through the clan's trial. Yi Weining's fate made him feel afraid, which was why he was angry. Yi Xing chuckled and said, I like to judge my enemies personally. I don't need to trouble the clan. Yi Xing then reached out to Yi Feng and said, Give me the head. You go and return the horse first. I'll be right back. Yi Weining was, after all, an elder of the clan. Yi Feng saw Yi Xing kill the former with his own eyes. Although he was happy, he was also nervous. Yi Feng threw Xiong Yang's head to Yi Xing and said, Brother Xing, be careful. Recently, Yi Xing had killed 3 powerhouses and a high-level ferocious bird in a row. There was an indescribable spirit in his heart. He took Xiong Yang's head and thought of what he had to do next. His heart was filled with anger. He let out a long whistle and rode away. Yi Feng looked at Yi Xing's back as he left. His eyes were filled with admiration. Compared to what Yi Xing was going to do next, killing Yi Weining was simply a trivial matter. Yi Wenchao was still angry when he suddenly heard Yi Xing mention the heads. He couldn't help but ask Yi Feng, heads. Whose head is that? Yi Feng let out a long sigh and said, the head of the Xiong family's elder, Xiong Yang. What? Yi Wenchao's expression changed drastically. Although Xiongyang and Yi Weining were both elders of their respective families, their statuses were completely different. Xiongyang's cultivation was at the peak of LV6, and he was one of the strongest people below martial Dao masters. In the martial arts world of Celestial Azure City, neither Yi Weining nor Yi Wenchao could be ranked. However, Xiongyang was famous and ranked at the forefront. When Yi Wenchao heard that the head in Yixing's hand was Xiongyang's head, how could his expression not change? He simply couldn't believe it. Could it be that Xiongyang was killed by Yixing? Thinking of this, Yi Wenchao's heart suddenly jumped. The difficulty of killing Xiongyang was much higher than killing Yi Weining. At this moment, Yi Wenchao recalled that Yixing had said that he would be back soon. It was obvious that he was going to do something. What could he do with Xiongyang's head? What is Yixing going to do? Yi Wenchao asked in a trembling voice. He's going to challenge Xiong Baotian. Yi Feng said. His voice was also trembling. It was obvious that he was extremely excited. What? He's going to challenge a martial Dao master? Yi Wenchao completely lost his composure as an elder of the family and directly exclaimed. Compared to challenging Xiong Baotian, killing Yi Weining became a trivial matter. Yi Wenchao anxiously ran to the family's main hall. He had to report this matter to the patriarch immediately. When Yi Wenchao arrived at the family's main hall and reported this matter to the patriarch, Yixing, the news of Yi Weining being killed by Yixing had already spread throughout the Ya family. When Yixing killed Yi Weining, it was outside Weining Institute. Although there were only 4 people present, many members of the Ya family saw it with their own eyes. A family elder being killed by a disciple of the younger generation, this kind of big news naturally spread immediately. Yi Wenchao was very pleased that the younger generation of the family had produced a student from the Purple Mountain Academy's gifted class. When he heard Yi Wenchao say that Yixing had killed Yi Weining because Yi Weining had hired an assassin to kill him, although he felt that Yixing's actions were a little extreme, he did not blame him too much. After all, if it was true that Yi Weining had hired an assassin to kill Yixing, Yi Weining indeed deserved to be killed. However, when Yi Wenchao said that Yixing had taken Xiongyang's head to challenge the Xiong family's rank 7 martial Dao master, Xiong Baotian, Yi Wenchao was so anxious that he almost jumped up. The grudge between Yixing and Xiong Baotian had long spread throughout Celestial Ocean City. The Ya family naturally knew that once the two of them started fighting, it would definitely be a situation where one of them would not rest until one of them was dead. Quick! Stop him! Yi Wenchao was as anxious as an ant on a hot nest as he shouted. Xiong Baotian was a martial Dao master. Although he was only at the early stage of rank 7, a master was still a master. Even a peak rank 6 martial Dao master's strength was far inferior to his. Yi Wenchao clearly did not think that Yixing's strength was enough to challenge Xiong Baotian. In his opinion, once the two of them started fighting, Yixing would definitely lose his life. It wasn't easy for the Ya family to produce a student from the Purple Mountain Academy's gifted class. How could they allow him to lose his life in Celestial Ocean City before entering the Purple Mountain Academy? Yi Wenchao issued an order for any member of the Ya family to stop Yixing if they saw him. He even personally went to the Xiong family to stop Yixing from challenging Xiong Baotian. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Yixing did not head to the Xiong family. Instead, he rode his horse to the busiest street in Celestial Ocean City. There were many martial Dao masters here, and the crowd was densely packed. On Celestial Ocean Street, there was a huge flag. The pole of the flag was a tree as thick as an adult's waist. It was over 20 zhang tall, and the word Celestial Ocean City fluttered on the flag. It was the symbol of Celestial Ocean City. Yixing rode his horse to this place. As a famous person in Celestial Ocean City, he attracted the attention of all the martial Dao masters here. Seeing Yixing with a bow and arrows on his back and a bag in his hand, he reined in his horse and stopped under the Celestial Ocean City's flag. The martial Dao masters were in a heated discussion, not knowing what Yixing wanted to do. At this time, Yixing shook the bag in his hand, revealing Xiaoyang's head. Seeing that Yixing was holding a human head in his hand, all the martial Dao masters were shocked. Many of them even cried out in surprise. Yixing tossed Xiaoyang's head into the air, then took out a black arrow and shot it out in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! The black arrow pierced through Xiaoyang's head, then nailed it to the top of the flag pole about 20 zhang above the ground. Following that, Yixing roared, "Xiong Bao Tian, tomorrow noon, I will have a life and death battle with you in the central plaza. Whoever doesn't dare to come is a grandson." Challenging Xiong Bao Tian to a battle did not necessarily require him to go to the Xiong family in front of Xiong Bao Tian. Yixing only needed to shout here and the news would spread through the entire Celestial Ocean City. Xiong Bao Tian would naturally receive it. Moreover, issuing a public challenge, Xiong Bao Tian had no choice but to come. Unless he, a martial Dao master, decided to be a coward for the rest of his life. This was obviously impossible. Yixing's roar silenced the crowd. The martial Dao masters were dumbfounded. Xiong Bao Tian was a 7th-stage martial Dao master, an existence that stood at the pinnacle of Celestial Ocean City's martial Dao world. Yixing actually wanted to challenge Xiong Bao Tian to a life-and-death battle. However, the silence only lasted for a breath's time. Following that, the martial Dao masters broke out into an uproar. Everyone exclaimed in shock, discussing spiritedly. After leaving behind a sentence, Yixing urged his horse to gallop towards the Ya family, quickly leaving this place. That head, why does it look a little like the Xiong family's elder Xiaoyang? Xiaoyang was a well-known figure in Celestial Ocean City. Naturally, there were many people who recognized him. Looking at the head nailed to the flagpole, there were people who quickly recognized it. Coincidentally, there were a few Xiong family martial Dao masters present. When they saw Xiaoyang's head, they were petrified. This was the most dignified elder Xiaoyang in the family. Those martial Dao masters who recognized the Xiong family martial Dao masters could tell from their reactions that the head on the flagpole was indeed the Xiong family elder Xiaoyang's head. Yixing nailed the head of the Xiong family elder Xiaoyang on the flagpole of Celestial Ocean City and issued a life-and-death challenge to the Xiong family martial Dao master. This matter was too shocking. The news spread rapidly as if it had grown wings. It probably wouldn't take long for this matter to spread throughout the entire Celestial Ocean City. Yuan Dao brought people to the Xiong family martial Dao masters. However, he didn't receive any news about Yixing. Later on, he heard that Yixing had gone to Celestial Ocean City Street. Yuan Dao brought people to rush over but failed to find him. However, when they saw Xiaoyang's head on the flagpole and heard that Yixing had already declared war on Xiong Bao Tian, whether it was Yuan Dao or the other members of the Ya family, they were all petrified. Words spoken were like spilled water. Since things had already come to this, it was useless to stop it. What they needed to worry about was the result of the life-and-death duel between Yixing and Xiong Bao Tian tomorrow at noon. When Yuan Dao and the others returned to the family, Yixing had already returned the horses. When they returned to his residence, both parties bumped into each other. Yixing took out the cloth scroll that he had found on the masked assassin and handed it to Yuan Dao. He said, "Patriarch, this is a drawing personally written by Yuanying." He asked the assassin to kill a disciple. The evidence is conclusive. Yuan Dao took the cloth scroll and casually glanced at it before putting it down. What he was concerned about now was the duel between Yixing and Xiong Bao Tian. The grudge between him and Yuanying was just a small matter. He couldn't be bothered with it. Sigh. Yuan Dao sighed and said, "Yixing, you are about to enter the Purple Mountain Academy. There is a great future waiting for you. Why do you have to compete with Xiong Bao Tian for a moment's length? Moreover, you want to have a life and death duel with him. This is a duel that you proposed. If he wants to kill you in the duel, even Grandmaster Mu Feng can't stop it. Yi Wendao's tone was melancholic. If Yi Xing died at the hands of Xiong Bao Tian, he would feel that it was a pity. Yi Xing's expression was much more indifferent. He said, if I don't settle this grudge with him, the Qingye village branch family will be harmed by him in the future. I won't give him any chance. He must die. At this point, Yi Xing smiled indifferently. His face revealed a confident expression. Patriarch, don't worry. Since I dare to challenge Xiong Bao Tian, I naturally have the confidence to deal with him. Yi Xing could only say this. He couldn't say that he had killed a martial Dao master. Who knew if the Ya family had spies from the Xiong family who would pass the news to the Xiong family? Thank you to Heavenly Mountain Man and Xan 2 for the tips of 588 coins. Thank you to Big Brother Shueshi for the tip of 100 coins. Thank you. My new book needs your recommendation votes. Brothers, please give your recommendation votes to the Archer God. Thank you very much. Chapter 85. Yi Xing's confidence surprised Yi Wendao. He couldn't understand how Yi Xing, who was only in the 5th stage of the martial path, could be so confident in defeating Xiong Bao Tian. The difference between the 5th stage and 7th stage wasn't just 2 stages. Furthermore, 7th stage martial artists could release their internal energy. This was 2 completely different stages of the martial path. The difference in strength was too great. A 5th stage martial artist could reach the pinnacle. For example, a middle-grade martial technique, a middle-grade qigong, a middle-grade body tempering technique, or even a low-grade martial technique in the transformative realm. All of these didn't have an advantage in front of a 7th stage martial Dao master. This was because a martial Dao master could also achieve all of these. Furthermore, a martial Dao master could also cultivate high-grade martial techniques, high-grade qigong, and even high-grade body tempering techniques. In these aspects, they had an advantage. He didn't have an advantage in martial techniques, and there was a 2-stage difference in cultivation. There was simply nothing that could make up for this difference. In Yi Wendao's opinion, Yi Xing's only advantage was the 7-star steps of the transformative realm. This was indeed better than Xiong Bao Tian's. However, there was no way he could beat Xiong Bao Tian with just his movement technique. Under the attack of Xiong Bao Tian's internal energy, the effect of his movement technique would be greatly reduced. Furthermore, to truly defeat Xiong Bao Tian, one had to have a strong attack power. If one's attack power wasn't enough, no matter how fast one's movement technique was, one could only barely stay undefeated. It might not even last long. After some thought, Yi Wendao didn't have high hopes for Yi Xing's life and death duel tomorrow. He could only shake his head and sigh. I hope you can come back alive tomorrow. Yi Wendao said in a melancholy tone before leaving with the rest of the group. Yi Xing's confidence wasn't affected by Yi Wendao and the rest. He returned to his residence and cultivated the 1,000 Shadow Fist in the courtyard. His 1,000 Shadow Fist was very close to reaching the Greater Mastery realm. Although he would be relying on his Bao to fight Xiong Bao Tian tomorrow, Yi Xing still had to raise his strength to its peak. After Yi Xing issued the life and death duel to Xiong Bao Tian, the upper echelons of the Xiong family received the news a little more than 15 minutes later. Xiong Yang was a famous figure in Celestial Azure City. Yet, his head had been severed and nailed to the most conspicuous place in Celestial Azure City. It was seen by countless martial artists. This was a great humiliation to the Xiong family. When the upper echelons of the Xiong family heard the news, they were all furious. Especially Xiong Bao Tian, who flew into a rage after being challenged by Yi Xing. This damned little bastard, I'm going to break his bones inch by inch and tear his body into pieces. I'm going to make him suffer all kinds of pain and torture until he dies. Xiong Badian clenched his fists until they creaked. He was like an enraged lion, gnashing his teeth and roaring. Tyrannical Bear's eyes were also filled with murderous intent, revealing a ferocious look. However, there was still a trace of caution. Tyrannical Bear said, "This little bastard should indeed be torn into pieces. However, Bao Tian, since he dares to challenge you to a life-and-death duel, he must be very confident. Otherwise, he wouldn't be seeking his own death." Xiong Baotian's eyes narrowed. His gaze flickered as he said, "I underestimated him before. Presumably, his archery skills have indeed reached an extraordinary level. Otherwise, Elder Xiong Yang wouldn't have died in his hands." However, at this point, Xiong Baotian's tone changed. His eyes revealed a look of confidence as he continued, "It's impossible for him to kill me in a duel with archery skills. As a martial Dao master, how can I be afraid of his bow and arrow when I'm on high alert?" Tyrannical Bear nodded. "That's true. Moreover, there will be many martial artists watching the duel in the central square. There won't be much space left for you to display your archery skills. Losing the advantage of archery skills, I really can't think of any other trump cards that he can use to contend with you." The murderous intent in Xiong Baotian's eyes intensified to the extreme. "This little bastard, I won't let him escape from my hands twice. Tomorrow, I'll make sure he's dead." Although Celestial Azure City wasn't small, it wasn't very big either. In just 2 hours, the news of Xiong Yang's head being nailed to the flagpole of Celestial Azure City and Yixing challenging Xiong Baotian to a duel of life and death at noon tomorrow was known by all the martial arts families in Celestial Azure City. This matter was undoubtedly a stone that caused 1,000 ripples in Celestial Azure City. Everyone who knew about it was shocked. Although Celestial Azure City had Gu Zhangnan, an 8th-level martial scholar, Gu Zhangnan was the city lord of Celestial Azure City. He was a member of the government and was the manager of Celestial Azure City. He drifted outside the martial arts world of Celestial Azure City. In the martial arts world of Celestial Azure City, a 7th-level martial scholar was a supreme existence. The Yi, Wei, and Xiong martial arts families had 3 at most and 2 at least. In total, there were less than 10 of them. To martial artists below the 7th level, a martial Dao master was like a giant mountain that was unattainable and needed to be looked up at. Who would dare to challenge a martial Dao master? Probably no one even dared to think about it. But today, there was really a martial artist challenging a martial Dao master. Moreover, it was a 5th-level martial scholar. It really made the martial artists of Celestial Azure City dumbfounded. Of course, after the shock, most of the martial artists would say, "You overestimate yourself." Celestial Azure City, City Lord's Mansion. As the City Lord of Celestial Azure City, Gu Zhangnan naturally had someone report this matter quickly. When Gu Zhangnan heard the news, he was shocked and immediately passed it on to Mu Feng. Yixing challenged martial Dao master Xiong Baotian to a duel of life and death. Even as a peak 8th-level martial scholar from the Zishan Marquis residence, Mu Feng couldn't help but be shocked after hearing the news. A 5th-level martial artist challenging a 7th-level martial scholar. Such a matter had never happened even in the county city. The shock on Mu Feng's face only lasted for a moment before it quickly returned to its original state. Gu Zhangnan looked at his expression and found it difficult to guess his thoughts. He said, "Mr. Mu, Yixing has been recruited by you as a student of the gifted class. Do you think you should stop this duel of life and death?" If. Before Gu Zhangnan finished speaking, Mu Feng waved his hand and interrupted him. He said, "Since Yixing proposed the duel of life and death, it means that he has a certain degree of confidence. Why should I stop it?" As he said that, Mu Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. His gaze suddenly became much sharper. He said, "If he can really kill a 7th-level martial scholar with a 5th-level cultivation, it will be really unexpected. Even in the entire Zishan County, he will be the only one. When we return to Zishan County City, I will report this matter to the Marquis. The Marquis likes young geniuses the most. I think he will be interested in him. The Marquis that Mu Feng mentioned was naturally the Marshal Saint Zishan Marquis. Gu Zhaonan was excited. Even as the city lord, it was rare for him to have the opportunity to meet Zishan Marquis. He said, if Yixing can enter the eyes of the Marquis, it will be a blessing cultivated by 3 lifetimes. However, what if he loses the duel and is killed by Xiong Baotian? Mu Feng's expression did not change. He said, since he proposed the duel of life and death, if he dies, it will only mean that he does not know the immensity of heaven and earth and is seeking his own death. Such an overconfident person will not live long even if he enters the Zishan Academy. Let him fend for himself. Not only those martial arts families, but even ordinary martial artists also heard about Yixing's deeds. The entire Celestial Ocean City was talking about Yixing's duel with Xiong Baotian. For a time, Yixing became the most famous martial artist in Celestial Ocean City. As for the person involved, Yixing, he put up a "Do Not Disturb" sign outside his residence and had been practicing the Thousand Shadows fist in the courtyard. The sky gradually darkened. After Yixing had dinner, he continued to practice. For Yixing, who could scan through the super brain at night, it was no different from daytime and was unaffected. It was not until the sky was completely dark and it was almost late at night that Yixing finally cultivated the Thousand Shadows fist to the realm of great mastery. The realm of great mastery of a high-grade martial skill was no small matter. It was much more difficult than reaching the realm of transformation for a low-grade martial skill. At least, it was normal for a 7th-layer martial Dao master to reach the realm of transformation for a low-grade martial skill. However, there was basically no one who could cultivate a high-grade martial skill to the realm of great mastery. Xiong Baotian, you shouldn't be able to block my Thousand Shadows fist at the realm of great mastery. Even if there are many spectators tomorrow, the battle space will be disadvantageous for me to display my archery skills. You might be able to get close to me, but I still have the ability to fight you in close combat, Yixing thought in his heart. He stood in the courtyard with his fists clenched, like a deep abyss and a high mountain. Thinking about the battle tomorrow, Yixing's heart was filled with lofty aspirations. His body exuded a shocking aura. Xiong Baotian, tomorrow noon will be the day you die. Although you won't be the first martial Dao master I kill, you will definitely be the most well-known martial Dao master to die by my hands. Yixing's eyes revealed a sharp light that contained a bone-deep killing intent. The next day, Yixing woke up early in the morning and meditated in the backyard. He was not cultivating, but meditating to adjust his state of mind. He wanted to be in his best condition for the battle of life and death today. When it was close to noon, Yuan Dao once again came to Yixing's residence and gave Yixing a pair of high-grade metal gloves. Although Yuan Dao did not have much confidence in Yixing yesterday, he was disappointed and did not want to care about Yixing's life and death. However, it was not easy for the Ya family to produce a talent. After thinking about it for an entire night, he still paid attention to Yixing today. Yixing, high-grade weapons and the gloves are extremely rare. This pair of silver fine silk gloves is Elder Wendy's weapon. I will lend it to you temporarily. I hope you can win this battle of life and death. Yuan Dao said as he handed the metal gloves to Yixing. Yi Wendy was a 7th-level martial Dao master of the Ya family. Thank you, Patriarch. Thank you, Elder Wendy. Don't worry, the one who will die will definitely be Xiong Baotian. Yixing accepted the silver fine silk gloves and became even more confident. Very good. If you can kill Xiong Baotian, it will be a great help to me. Yuan Dao was influenced by Yixing and a trace of excitement appeared in his eyes. Yuan Dao and Xiong Baotian were both in their 40s. They were of the same generation and had been rivals since they were young. Yuan Dao was a 6-star destiny state, while Xiong Bao Tian was a 7-star destiny state. When they were young, Yuan Dao was naturally weaker than Xiong Bao Tian and had scars left behind by Xiong Bao Tian. Although Yuan Dao was not weaker than Xiong Bao Tian now, their statuses meant that they would not have the chance to fight again. If Yi Xing could really kill Xiong Bao Tian, it could be considered as fulfilling Yuan Dao's wish. Thank you, Brother Midnight Breeze, for the 200 coins. Thank you, Ghost Cat, Tianyu Tianyi, and the other brothers for the 100 coins. Thank you. This author is the only male fan. Way. Letter, EK Chocolate. Please pay attention to this. When the arrow god comes out with simplified Chinese, he will draw a lucky reader to give him a signed book. Book Communication Skirt, 3873092228. Chocolate will occasionally enter to discuss the plot with his brothers. Chapter 86. The central square of Celestial Azure City was packed with people. The liveliness today was not inferior to the recruitment competition 2 days ago. In fact, it was even slightly better. After all, it was extremely rare to see a martial Dao master fight. Countless martial artists from Celestial Azure City's martial Dao family clans had flocked over. Mu Feng and Gu Tsangnan had also ascended to the loft next to the square to watch from above. When it was close to noon, the Ya family members arrived at the central square. Yi Xing was among them. He held the dragon tendon bow and walked into the center of the square. With the end of the recruitment competition, the arena in the center of the square had been torn down. The spectating martial artists consciously left an empty space in the center of the square for Yi Xing and Xiong Baotian's duel. It was about 20 feet in radius. This was a very large space. Normally, there was no need to use such a large space for a duel. A ring with a radius of 10 zhang would be enough. However, Yi Xing and Xiong Baotian were dueling to the death. When the time came, it would only be a matter of life and death, regardless of the location. Therefore, the spectating martial artists did not dare to get too close and only surrounded the periphery of the square. 20 feet in radius, the maximum distance was about 60 meters. 120 steps. Compared to the range of Yi Xing's bow and arrow, this space was really small. However, for a martial Dao master like Xiong Baotian, this distance was not considered large. With his attainments in Qinggong, as well as his external attacks, he could attack in an extremely short amount of time even at the furthest distance. Therefore, the battlefield was considered a disadvantage for Yi Xing. However, for Xiong Baotian, it was considered an advantage. When the martial artists saw Yi Xing coming over with bow and arrow, they knew that Yi Xing's forte was archery. If Yi Xing wanted to rely on archery to fight Xiong Baotian, then he would have already lost by half the battle. This made the majority of the martial artists not optimistic about Yi Xing's chances. Some of them revealed gloating smiles, while others sighed in pity. In their opinion, Yi Xing would definitely die in Xiong Baotian's hands today. Yi Xing stood in the middle of the square with bow and arrow in his arms. His heart was filled with lofty sentiments, and his posture was like a mountain. Ever since he made the decision to challenge Xiong Baotian, Yi Xing's temperament had undergone a metamorphosis. Any casual stand, he was like a deep pool of water, a mountain peak, making people look up to him. Yi Xing closed his eyes and waited calmly for Xiong Baotian's arrival. He was certain that Xiong Baotian would come. Xiong Baotian, Xiong Baotians, Xiong Baotian, Baotians, Xiong Baotian. Xiong Baotian, Xiong Baotian, Xiong Baotian, Baotian, Xiong, Yi, Xiong Yi. Xiong, Baotian, Yi, Baotian, Baotian. Ya Baotian was the first to discover Baotian's figure. Because the direction Baotian entered the square was exactly where the Ya family was. Although Bao Tian did not put Yixing in his eyes, Yixing's archery skills were still important enough. Any opportunity to make Yixing's archery skills difficult to display, he would take advantage of it. If he walked out from the Xiong Baotians, then the Xiong Baotian would be behind him. Yixing's arrow might attack the Xiong Baotian after passing by him. And if he walked out from the Ya families, then, if he avoided the arrow attack would be aimed at the Ya family's people. This point would definitely make Yixing wary when he shot the arrow. Therefore, he was wary of hurting the Ya family's people. When the distance between the two was too far and he could avoid the arrow, Yixing would not shoot. And when the distance was close, it would be time for Bao Tian to take Yixing's life. "Little bastard, I'm here to take your dog life." Bao Tian walked into the square from the Ya family's direction, and his voice was full of murderous intent. Yixing turned around and opened his eyes. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he said indifferently, "Bao Tian, do you dare to make a bet with me?" Yixing's calmness surprised Bao Tian. He continued to walk forward and approached Yixing. He said, "What are we betting on?" Yixing said, "Our life and death is already in the outcome of the duel. If we want to bet, then it's naturally something other than life and death. If I win, let me go to the Xiong family's martial arts library to watch martial arts for 4 hours. If you win, I will go to your son's memorial tablet and kowtow before I die. How about it?" Bao Tian's eyes flashed. Killing Yixing like this was letting him off too easily. If he could kowtow before Xiong Chitsai's memorial tablet and apologize, Bao Tian's heart would naturally be more carefree. And if Yixing won, he could only watch for 4 hours at the Xiong family's martial arts library. Not to mention 4 hours, even if he had a whole day, how much could he remember? Most of the words in the martial arts manuals were bitter and difficult to understand. It was difficult to read the manuals, let alone memorize them. Bao Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He sneered, "You still think you have a chance to win? Ha! Since you want to kowtow before my son's memorial tablet and apologize, of course I will agree." Yixing chuckled and said, "Bao Tian, just your agreement is not enough. When you die, what if the Xiong family doesn't care about your face and refuses to admit defeat? This bet can only count if the Xiong family head agrees." "You!" Bao Tian was furious. He wanted to shout, "You're courting death." However, the two were in a life and death duel. There was no such thing as courting death. It was already a situation where either you die or I die. On one side of the square, Bao Tian narrowed his eyes. He wanted to see where Yixing's confidence came from. Unfortunately, he couldn't see it and couldn't figure it out. Regarding Yixing's request, Bao Tian didn't think it was too much. Moreover, in his opinion, Yixing was definitely going to die. How could he still have the life to go to the Xiong family's martial arts library to watch martial arts? Bao Tian sneered and said, "Well, I promise you. If you can win, not to mention 4 hours, even 6 hours is fine. I'm afraid that you won't have that chance." After listening to Bao Tian's words, Yixing's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a trace of a smile. Looking at Bao Tian, his eyes suddenly became sharp. "Your value ends here. You can die now." While speaking, Yixing used the Big Dipper steps and his body suddenly retreated backward. At the same time, he pulled out a black edge arrow from the quiver like lightning. While his body was retreating, he knocked the arrow on the string and shot the arrow in one breath. Whoosh! When his voice fell, there was a loud sound. It was the black edge arrow that was shot out from the string and shot toward Bao Tian. "Little bastard, die." When Yixing made his move, Bao Tian was also within 10 feet. He also shouted and suddenly used his body movement to rush toward Yixing. He wanted to kill Yixing Clang. When the arrow left the string, it was the time when the sword was unsheathed. With a bright internal strength, the sword chi was extremely sharp. Arrow and sword, one was a long-range attack weapon and the other was a close-range attack weapon. But they had the same characteristics, fast speed and many changes. In such a short distance, the revolving arrow technique's trajectory distortion was useless. The only thing that pursued was speed. It wanted to kill the opponent in the shortest time possible. Therefore, this arrow was straight and fast to the extreme. If Bao Tian did not use his sword, his throat would definitely be pierced in an instant. However, Bao Tian used his sword. Moreover, his sword was also as fast as lightning. Clang! The black edge arrow was split by Bao Tian's sword. In the collision between the arrow and the sword chi, the arrow won, but in the collision between the arrow and the sword won. With a crisp sound, the black edge arrow was split, but Bao Tian's speed did not decrease at all. Like a rock spreading its wings, he continued to chase Yixing. At the same time, with a wave of his sword, his internal strength followed the sword and turned into a bright sword chi, shooting toward Yixing who was 10 feet away. At this moment, Xiong Badian was secretly alarmed. Although his sword strike had sent the arrow flying and his speed wasn't affected, his hands were slightly numb from the impact. This meant that the power contained within the arrow was extremely terrifying and posed a great threat to him. Therefore, he had to fight speed with speed. In the shortest time possible, he killed his way to Yixing's side, making Yixing's bow useless. In this way, he would be able to win. To shoot an arrow, there was the process of taking the arrow, drawing the bow, and shooting. After all, it was not as simple and fast as waving a sword. When Yixing took out the second arrow and was ready to shoot, the bright sword chi was already in front of him. No matter how fast he retreated, he could not be faster than the attack of the sword chi. As a last resort, Yixing could only give up shooting the second arrow. The wind force was integrated into the 7-star steps. His body dodged to the side like lightning, avoiding the attack of the sword chi. In the first moment after dodging, Yixing put the arrow in his hand on the bow and immediately shot toward Bao Tian. Unfortunately, a moment was not a short time for a martial Dao master. Because of that moment of dodging, the distance between the two was suddenly shortened by half, leaving only about 5 feet. Clang! The black edge arrow shot by Yixing had just left the bowstring. Before it could fully exert its strength, it was hit by Bao Tian's sword and was sent flying to the distance like a cold star. Little beast, without distance, let's see what use your bow and arrow can be, hee hee. Bao Tian sneered. The sword in his hand rolled up a cold light, and in an instant, it pierced toward Yixing's heart. Heart-killing sword. The speed of this sword had reached the extreme. The sharp sword chi condensed into a beam, almost like an arrow, and burst out. Countless warriors were watching the battle between the two with unblinking eyes, and their hearts were extremely nervous. This was not a competition, but a battle of life and death. Every move was aimed at killing the opponent, which made people's hearts pound. The distance between them was too short. Facing the attack of the heart-killing sword, Yixing did not have time to use his archery skills. Even with the 7-star steps, it was difficult to avoid the assassination of the sharp sword chi. At this moment, the tiger roared and Yixing punched out. His fist, which was wearing an upper-grade weapon, the silver fine silk glove, was invincible. It blasted on the condensed sword chi. Although the sword chi was sharp, its power was not as strong as the sword itself. It was defeated by Yixing's punch. However, the sword, which was like lightning, followed closely, with a fierce killing intent, instantly pierced toward him. Without distance, let's see how you can fight with me, ha 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 ha. Bao Tian laughed. Victory was in his hands. Today's recommendation votes are not as good as yesterday's. If there are any brothers who forgot to vote, please remember to vote, thank you. Chapter 87. Whoosh! The treasure sword instantly pierced through the fist and arm. But at this moment, the fist and arm also disappeared. What was stabbed was only an afterimage. The 7-star steps of the manifestation boundary allowed him to change in a small area. Without waiting for Xiong Baotian's treasure sword to reach him, Yixing had already dodged 30 feet away. Xiong Baotian frowned. A cold light flashed and he slashed out with his sword again. He coldly snorted and said, "Let's see how many of my swords you can dodge with your movement technique." The sword emitted a cold light. It was like a waterfall that endlessly rushed towards Yixing. The super brain activated its scanning mode. Xiong Baotian's every move was within Yixing's expectations. In close combat, Yixing didn't need to use a bow and arrow. He slung the dragon tendon bow across his body and used the 7-star steps with all his strength to avoid Xiong Baotian's swordsmanship. The 7-star steps of the manifestation boundary were indeed extraordinary. Xiong Baotian attacked several times in a row. But, only the sword energy's sharpness could reach Yixing. The sword's body was always half a beat slower. Yixing wore silver silk gloves and held a high-grade dagger in his hand. Xiong Baotian's sword energy's sharpness was forcibly defeated by him. His strength wasn't weak. Just dealing with the sword energy's sharpness was more than enough to spare. In the blink of an eye, over a dozen moves had passed. The martial artists watching were all shocked. Yixing's movement technique had reached the acme of perfection. No matter how close Xiong Baotian approached, the distance between the two was always 30 feet. Besides the sword energy's sharpness, which could attack Yixing the moment it left his body, the sword's body always had a time difference. Thus, Yixing was able to dodge it. However, although the sword energy's sharpness was terrifying, it couldn't do anything to Yixing. For a time, the battle between the two fell into a stalemate. This was something that no one had expected. Even Yixing was shocked. Even if Yixing's 7-star steps had reached the transformation realm, there shouldn't be a situation where Xiong Baotian couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Unless Yixing had extremely high combat skills and could always predict Xiong Baotian's attack position in advance. A martial skill was a kind of skill, but it was a specific skill. For example, when the Roaring Tiger Fist was cultivated to perfection, it was only the skill of the Roaring Tiger Fist that had reached perfection. It had nothing to do with other martial skills. However, true combat skills referred to a person's comprehensive reaction ability. It was a comprehensive skill. A person with excellent combat skills would not be weak even if he did not know any martial arts. Furthermore, if one's combat skills were high, it was impossible for them to not know any martial skills. On the contrary, their attainments in all martial skills would be even higher. The most direct difference between martial skills and combat skills was that a superior martial skill could defeat an opponent whose cultivation was higher than oneself but lower than oneself, while a superior combat skill could defeat an opponent whose strength was higher than oneself. Yixing was a martial arts genius with a strong combat ability. It was clear that his combat skills were indeed high. This made Yixing's eyes light up. It seemed that Yixing's confidence was indeed based on something. However, Yiwen was more worried. Even if one's combat skills were high and could defeat an opponent whose strength was higher than oneself, once the difference in strength between the two parties was too great, it would be extremely difficult to achieve victory. The difference in strength between Yixing and Xiong Baotian was indeed very big. The strength that Yixing had displayed was not considered top-notch among 6th-level martialists, while Xiong Baotian was a genuine 7th-level martial Dao master. At the moment, even though Xiong Baotian had the upper hand, he was still very unhappy. Although Yixing had been suppressed by him, he had still been unable to kill Yixing, who was only a 5th-level martial Dao master. He hadn't even been injured. To a martial Dao master like Xiong Baotian, this was a very disgraceful thing. This was especially so under the watchful eyes of so many people. This made Xiong Baotian feel even more humiliated. Unfortunately, he had no choice. Yixing's reaction speed was too fast. Unless he was exhausted and made a mistake, he simply couldn't get close to Yixing. Hide. Let me see how long you can hide. While Violent Bear attacked with his sword, he angrily shouted, "You're only at the 5th level of cultivation. Your inner strength has only been refined to the flesh and blood, not even to the skin. But I am a martial Dao master. When your inner strength is exhausted, see how I deal with you. I'll make you beg for death." The martialists, who had originally had some confidence in Yixing because of his outstanding performance, lost all hope in Yixing after hearing Xiong Baotian's words. Xiong Baotian was right. How deep was the internal strength of a martial Dao master? Now Yixing was being suppressed by Xiong Baotian. When his internal strength ran out, his defeat was inevitable. Perhaps Xiong Baotian's words poked at Yixing's worries. As soon as the former's voice fell, Yixing's face changed and his breath immediately showed signs of instability. Seeing this, Xiong Baotian sneered and said, "Let's see how long you can last." After only 3 moves, Yixing's face was suddenly shocked. It seemed that his internal strength was not enough. After dodging Xiong Baotian's sword, his body suddenly trembled and there was a momentary pause. Not good. Many people from the Ya family, as well as some martialists who stood on Yixing's side, exclaimed. Their faces changed dramatically. The confrontation between the two could be as simple as lightning. At this time, any pause would be a threat. Xiong Baotian really caught Yixing's flaw. With a laugh, the sword in his hand emitted a cold light and instantly pierced toward Yixing's heart. However, at this time, the corner of Yixing's mouth was slightly raised, revealing a trace of a smile. He didn't look like he was lacking internal strength at all. His feet stepped on the 7 stars and his body turned into a phantom. In an instant, he moved 3 feet to the side. Xiong Baotian's sword suddenly missed. Without waiting for Xiong Baotian to retract his sword, Yixing blocked with the dagger in his hand and pushed outwards. Originally, with Yixing's strength, it was impossible for him to contend with Xiong Baotian. However, Yixing now followed the force of Xiong Baotian's sword and pushed it. Xiong Baotian's sword was suddenly pushed away by Yixing, while Yixing's body moved forward and appeared in front of Xiong Baotian. Seeing Yixing's trick, Xiong Baotian was furious. However, when Yixing moved in front of Xiong Baotian, Xiong Baotian's eyes revealed an excited smile. He was worried that Yixing's movements were too fast and he couldn't get close. Now that Yixing took the initiative to close the distance between them, wasn't that seeking his own death? Xiong Baotian's left hand turned into a claw and grabbed Yixing's shoulder like lightning. Upper-grade martial skill, bone-shattering claw. If this claw was caught, the bones in Yixing's shoulder would definitely be shattered and he would be restrained by Xiong Baotian, unable to move. At this moment, the Xiong family members were overjoyed and couldn't help but cheer. As for the Ya family members, their expressions changed and their faces turned ashen. However, Yixing's face still had a confident smile. At the same time that Xiong Baotian grabbed out with the bone-shattering claw, Yixing had already punched out. Upper-grade martial skill, Thousand Shadow Fist. In the blink of an eye, Yixing's arm disappeared, leaving behind only the dense shadows of his fists. Bang! At the critical moment, there was an explosion. Xiong Baotian's body instantly retreated backward and was sent flying by Yixing's punch. The Thousand Shadow Fist at the large success stage was indeed extraordinary. Xiong Baotian didn't even see Yixing's fist clearly and was already hit by Yixing's fist. And the bone-shattering claw he grabbed out hadn't even touched Yixing's clothes. At this moment, many martial artists exclaimed and looked at Xiong Baotian, who was sent flying by Yixing with faces full of disbelief. A 7th grade martial Dao master was actually sent flying by Yixing in a head-on battle. How was this possible? This sudden change shocked the hearts of all the martial artists present. Xiong Batian, who had been sent flying, was not only filled with humiliation, but also regret. He had been tricked by Yixing once again. If he hadn't been so impatient with his attack just now, and instead had kept a backup move, then it would have been impossible for him to not be able to pull back his sword. And if he had withdrawn his sword, he wouldn't have been hit by Yixing's punch. No matter how fast Yixing's fist was, it couldn't be faster than his sword. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Yixing deliberately showed a flaw in order to block Xiong Baotian's sword. Xiong Baotian fell for it and immediately stepped into Yixing's chain of killing moves. At the same time as the punch sent Xiong Baotian flying, Yixing's body also used the 7-star steps to retreat with the recoil force. Moreover, Yixing immediately threw away the dagger in his hand and took out the dragon tendon bow and black edge arrow. Drawing the bow and shooting the arrow only took a blink of an eye. The power of Yixing's punch wasn't focused on hurting people but on pushing them away. Xiong Baotian was sent flying by Yixing's punch. Whoosh! When Yixing shot the black edge arrow, Xiong Baotian was still floating in the air. At this time, Xiong Baotian had nowhere to borrow strength and nowhere to hide. Moreover, Yixing's arrow only pursued speed and power without any distortion in its trajectory. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Xiong Baotian didn't have time to use his inner strength to split the arrow. He could only hold his sword horizontally and block the arrow. If he was standing on the ground, Xiong Baotian could completely rely on his legs to take the arrow's power without taking half a step back. Even so, he did not have any place to borrow strength from as he was in the air. Even though he managed to block the arrow, the force from the arrow caused him to fly backward even faster. In the blink of an eye, Xiong Baotian flew back another 100 feet. At this time, the distance between the two was more than 200 feet. Seeing Xiong Baotian fly back, the warriors watching from the back naturally scattered to the sides, leaving a large space. Yixing no longer retreated. His legs bent into a bow and firmly planted into the ground. At the same time, he took out 3 black edge arrows and knocked them on the bowstring. Whoosh! 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 Just as Xiong Baotian was about to land, Yixing released 3 arrows. The 3 black edge arrows drew different distorted trajectories in the air, but they all had the same target, Xiong Baotian. The arrows that contained the power of the wind were extremely fast. Moreover, their trajectories were mysterious and unpredictable. This was Yixing's true killing move. At this time, Xiong Baotian's situation was exactly the same as that of the masked assassin. How could he block Yixing's arrows? Clang! Clang! Xiong Baotian used all his strength and waved his sword to form a sword screen that densely covered the surroundings. However, he was only able to block 2 black edge arrows. However, Yixing shot a total of 3 arrows. Xiong Baotian, who had just landed, felt a pain in his chest. He looked down and saw a blood-stained black arrow piercing through his heart. This black edge arrow shot through Xiong Baotian's back and out of his chest, piercing through his heart. Chapter 88. Impossible. Blood gushed out of Xiong Baotian's mouth as he spat out those words in disbelief. Then, his body fell backward, dead. All the martial artists present, regardless of their cultivation, were incomparably shocked, their eyes filled with shock. Most of the martial artists had thought that Xiong Baotian would definitely win this battle and Yixing would definitely die. However, the result was the complete opposite. Xiong Baotian, as a martial Dao master, had reigned supreme in Tiansang City for decades. In the end, he had fallen at the hands of a rank 5 junior. This was truly unexpected and shocking. In an instant, cries of surprise rang out everywhere. The Ya family members, on the other hand, let out a burst of enthusiastic cheers. Although this result was truly unbelievable, and the Ya family members were also incomparably shocked, the joy in their hearts was even more intense. Good! 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 Yi Wendao shouted the word good 3 times in a row, his emotions incomparably emotional. He had hoped that Yi Xing would win this battle. However, from the beginning, Yi Wendao had very little confidence in Yi Xing. Now that Xiong Bao Tian had died, his wish had finally been fulfilled. Naturally, he was incomparably excited. Compared to the joy of the Ya family members, the Xiong family members were filled with shock and worry. Their expressions changed drastically, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. They dared not believe that Xiong Bao Tian, a martial Dao master, would actually be shot to death by a rank 5 junior. Furthermore, it wasn't a sneak attack. The two of them had fought head-on before. However, Xiong Bao Tian had died, and his corpse was right in front of them. They had no choice but to believe it. Looking at Yi Xing, who was standing with his Bao, the Xiong family members were all enraged, especially Xiong Baolong and the other Xiong family members. Their eyes were filled with killing intent. If looks had killing intent, Yi Xing would have been cut to pieces by now. It wasn't easy for a family to produce a martial Dao master. Regardless of which family it was, it would take at least 10 years, or even 20 years, for a martial Dao master to appear. The death of any one of them was a heavy blow to the family. How could the Xiong family members not be angry? However, what made the Xiong clan even angrier was yet to come. At this moment, Yi Xing smiled at Tyrannical Bear. His smile was like the spring breeze, proving that he was in a very good mood. Xiong family head, Xiong Bao Tian has lost. The Xiong family should fulfill their promise and let me enter the martial pavilion to study martial arts for 4 hours. Xiong Baolong's breathing was ragged, and his fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. His face alternated between green and white, and the fury in his eyes was about to burst out. The Xiong family's martial Dao master had been shot to death by Yi Xing. Now, the Xiong family wanted to open the martial pavilion and let Yi Xing in to view the martial arts. Where would the Xiong family put their face? Previously, Violent Bear thought that Violent Bear would win for sure, and Yi Xing wouldn't have a chance. Therefore, he didn't think that Yi Xing's condition was problematic. However, Tyrannical Bear now understood that Yi Xing's request was an insult to the Xiong family's reputation. It was as if he had stepped on the Xiong family and spat out a mouthful of phlegm. Yi Xing took in Violent Bear's expression and sneered, "What? Could it be that Xiong family head has forgotten what you promised?" All the martial Dao friends here still remember it very clearly. That's right, we still remember it. A bet is a bet. Since the Xiong family has lost, they must let young Master Yi enter the martial pavilion. Someone in the crowd shouted and took the opportunity to kick up a fuss. They couldn't wait for the Xiong family to lose face. The Xiong family had taken root in Azure Sky City for a long time and had oppressed countless martial Dao families and martial Dao cultivators. Now was the best time to kick them while they were down. Anyway, there was a sea of people at the moment. How would the Xiong family know who was shouting in the crowd? With one person starting, it was like opening a dam. Behind him, more people took the opportunity to shout and humiliate the Xiong family. Violent Bear's veins were bulging. He didn't know who was kicking up a fuss, but all his anger and hatred fell on Yi Xing. His eyes flickered, containing a terrifying murderous intent. At this moment, Violent Bear couldn't wait to charge into the square and tear Yi Xing into pieces. However, no matter how angry he was, he didn't dare to really do it. Grandmaster Mu Feng from the Zishan Marquis residence was watching from the pavilion beside the square. If he dared to make a move on Yi Xing, then his death would come. Moreover, even without Grandmaster Mu Feng, just based on the terrifying strength Yi Xing had displayed, it wouldn't be easy for Violent Bear to kill him. Not to mention, the head of the Ye family, Yi Wendao, was here. It was impossible for Violent Bear to succeed. Therefore, no matter how angry Violent Bear was, he could only burn it in his heart. Even if his teeth were broken, he could only swallow it. He couldn't do anything to Yi Xing. Violent Bear gritted his teeth and said, "Come to the Xiong family tomorrow at 7 in the morning. You can stay in the Martial Pavilion for 4 hours from 7 to 9. There was still plenty of time today. Why did he have to go tomorrow at 7 in the morning? He was afraid that by tomorrow at 7 in the morning, some of the Xiong family's secret martial arts manuals would have already been hidden in the Martial Pavilion. The ones Yi Xing could see were all secret martial arts manuals in the Ye family's Martial Pavilion. Yi Xing smiled faintly and said, "Ah. Patriarch Xiong, if the Xiong clan empties the Martial Pavilion today, do you think I'll go hungry tomorrow? Wouldn't that be a wasted trip?" Yi Xing's smile disappeared and his expression became serious. He continued, "If you want to take a look, you naturally have to take a look now. Only by going immediately would the Xiong family not have time to move the secret martial arts manuals in the Martial Pavilion." Violent Bear was trembling with anger and almost lost his mind. He shouted angrily, "Yi Xing, my Xiong family has already made enough concessions. Don't be greedy and push me too far. If you want to enter my Xiong family's Martial Pavilion now, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave alive." Yi Xing laughed. Violent Bear's words did not make him feel threatened at all. He said, "I've been accepted by Master Mu as a student of the Purple Mountain Academy's genius class. I'd like to see how your Xiong family will let me enter alive and not leave alive." Violent Bear's expression froze when he heard this. Just now, his anger had attacked his heart and his words were unwise. Sure enough, it was not only Yi Xing who was disdainful of his words. There were even some martial artists in the crowd who loudly jeered, "The Xiong family is so arrogant. They can kill a student of the Purple Mountain Academy's genius class just because they want to. Do they even put the Purple Mountain Academy in their eyes?" Not only do they not put the Purple Mountain Academy in their eyes, young Master Yi was accepted by Master Mu of the Purple Mountain Marquis residence as a student of the genius class. Now that Master Mu is still in Celestial Azure City, they don't put Master Mu in their eyes. Xiong Baolong's expression immediately changed and his face turned pale. He immediately felt a sharp gaze coming from the pavilion at the edge of the square and locking onto him. Violent Bear glanced at the loft at the edge of the square. Mu Feng was indeed standing at the window, coldly staring at him. This made Violent Bear's body suddenly turn cold and he shivered. "Mr. Mu, please calm down." Violent Bear hurriedly bowed to Mu Feng and said respectfully, "I was angry and made a slip of the tongue. What I said just now was definitely not my intention. Even if you gave me 10,000 guts, I wouldn't dare to do such a thing." Mu Feng's voice came with a trace of coldness, "It's good that you know. Now bring Yi Xing to the Martial Pavilion. If he loses a single hair, the Xiong family will cease to exist in Celestial Azure City." "Yes. Yes, I will follow Mr. Mu's orders." Violent Bear bowed to Mu Feng again. When he looked at Yi Xing, even if he was extremely unwilling, he didn't dare to show any malicious intent to Yi Xing. Violent Bear's body was taken care of by the Xiong family. Yi Xing returned to the Xiong family with Violent Bear and the rest at the first moment and went straight to the Xiong family's Martial Pavilion. He didn't give the Xiong family any chance to transfer the martial arts manuals. Moreover, after entering the Martial Pavilion, Yi Xing went straight to the 3rd floor. He first collected all the upper-grade martial arts manuals, then went to the 2nd floor and collected all the middle-grade martial arts manuals. He moved them all to the 1st floor and slowly read them. In about 2 hours, Yi Xing had read through all the martial arts manuals in the Xiong family's Martial Pavilion. Because many of the lower and middle grade martial arts manuals were similar to those in the Ya family's martial pavilion, Yixing skipped over those that were duplicated and saved a lot of time. All the martial arts manuals that he had read once were scanned and stored in his super brain so that he could never forget them. Yixing had already achieved his goal. Without waiting for 4 hours to pass, he left the Xiong family's martial pavilion and left with a hearty laugh. Everyone in the Xiong family looked at Yixing's back as he left. Their faces were filled with hatred, but none of them dared to attack Yixing. They could only watch as Yixing left. Patriarch, our Xiong family has suffered such a huge loss. Our dignity has been trampled on and we have lost a lot of face. Are we just going to let it go like this? A few high-ranking elders gathered in front of Violent Bear and said unwillingly. Violent Bear's eyes flashed and he growled in a low voice, "Let it go. How can we let it go like this? Right now, he has Mu Feng protecting him, but Mu Feng can only protect him for a while. Once he enters the Purple Mountain Academy, he will no longer have anything to do with Mu Feng." Violent Bear's eyes narrowed and his voice became more and more ruthless. "Originally, I didn't want to cause trouble for the strange saint in the Purple Mountain Academy. But now, we can no longer stop this little bastard from entering the Purple Mountain Academy. We can only rely on the strange saint to deal with him in the Purple Mountain Academy. I will write a letter to the strange saint, telling him that once this little bastard enters the Purple Mountain Academy, he will never return." An elder who had been to the Purple Mountain Academy nodded and said, "Although the Purple Mountain Academy is the cradle of the strong, how can there not be a few deaths every year? With the strange saint's identity as the vice principal's personal disciple, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with this little bastard." Today's matter was not only witnessed by countless warriors, but also spread through the entire Azure Sky City at an extremely fast speed. If one were to judge the most famous warrior in Azure Sky City, it wouldn't be the city lord, Gutsangnan, nor would it be the patriarchs of the Yi, Wei, and Xiong families who were at the 7th level of the martial path. It would be the elite of the younger generation who was only at the 5th level of the martial path, Yixing. Before, Wei Qingxuan's reputation had always been above Yixing's in Azure Sky City. But now, even a genius with such potential like Wei Qingxuan's reputation couldn't be compared to Yixing's. Yixing's name was spreading through Celestial Azure City at an extremely fast speed. It probably wouldn't be long before he became a figure that everyone in Celestial Azure City knew. He would become a legend of his generation. Please pay attention to Lord Chocolate. Everyone. Way. Letter. Account. Number, EK Chocolate. From tomorrow onwards, I will be on Way. The letter will update the portrait of the character in the book. Tomorrow, it will be Wei Qingxian. Chapter 89. The Ya family in Celestial Firmament City was celebrating. Yixing had already become an important figure in the Ya family when he was selected by Mu Fengshou as a student of the Zishan Academy's genius class. Now, his status had become even more important. Even the elders of the family had to be polite and respectful to him. This was something he didn't feel when he was a student of the genius class. Previously, he was an important figure in the family because of his identity as a student of the genius class. Now, it was because of his strength that could kill a martial master. In the Star Continent, the strong were respected. One's own strength was what earned the most respect and reverence. That night, Yixing wrote some of the important martial arts manuals in the Ya family's martial pavilion into books and handed them to the family head, Yuan Dao, to be kept in the Ya family's martial pavilion. From now on, the Xiong family's martial arts advantage would no longer exist. Whatever the Xiong family had, the Ya family had. Whatever the Ya family had, the Xiong family might not have. Yixing didn't sleep the whole night. In the morning, he meditated for 2 hours and didn't feel tired. Today was the day he left Celestial Firmament City with Mu Fengshou. There were 3 people from the Ya family entering the Zishan Academy. Other than Yi Xing, there was also Yi Yunlong and Yi Yundai. The family head, Yi Wendao, personally led the 3 of them to the City Lord's mansion. Among the 10 people from Celestial Firmament City entering the Zishan Academy, other than the 3 from the Ya family, there were 3 from the Wei family. They were Wei Qingxian, Wei Qingyan, and Wei Qingzhou. 1 from the City Lord's mansion was Gui Jin. 2 from the Xiong family were Xiong Chikai and Xiong Chiyu. The last one was an ordinary family disciple, Zhao Chang. Originally, the 2 from the Xiong family were supposed to be Xiong Qifeng and Xiong Chikai. However, Xiong Qifeng was crippled by Yi Xing. The 10 juniors gathered together and separated into small groups. The juniors of the Yi clan and Xiong clan were the furthest apart and looked at each other with hatred. Wei Qingxian. Yi Xing. Yi Xing smiled. Yi Yunlong, Wei Qingyan, and the other juniors of the Yi and Wei families all smiled knowingly. They could see that the relationship between Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian was not ordinary. Mu Feng. The City Lord's mansion had already arranged a beast carriage for the 10 Zishan Academy students. As for Mu Feng, he had his own beast carriage, which was of a higher grade than the one in the City Lord's mansion. The beast carriage of the City Lord's mansion was pulled by mid-level vicious beasts, while Mu Feng's beast carriage was pulled by high-level vicious beasts. The decorations on the carriage were naturally more luxurious. Yi Xing. Wei Qingxian. You 2 come with me. Mu Feng instructed before boarding the carriage. Thus, Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian followed Mu Feng and sat in the front carriage, while the other 8 juniors sat in the back carriage. Before Yi Xing boarded the carriage, he scanned the carriage driver and found that he was a 7th-level martial Dao master. He couldn't help but secretly exclaim. The Zishan Marquis mansion was indeed extraordinary. Even the carriage driver was a martial Dao master. On the contrary, the carriage driver of the City Lord's mansion was much inferior. He was only a 5th-level martial Dao master. Yi Xing remembered that when he went from Qingya village to the main Ya family in Azure Sky City, he rode a horse carriage and the carriage driver was a 3rd-level martial disciple. Qingya village's Ya family, the City Lord's mansion, and the Zishan Marquis mansion were 3 different forces. The difference between them could be seen clearly just by looking at the transportation and carriage drivers. The distance between Azure Sky City and Azure Sky City was very far. It was at least 5 times the distance between Qingya village and Azure Sky City. If they rode a horse carriage, it would take 5 days, but if they rode a beast carriage, it would only take a day and a half. This was because the City Lord's mansion's beast carriage was only pulled by mid-level vicious beasts, which slowed down the speed. If it was only the Zishan Marquis mansion's beast carriage, it would take less than a day to reach Azure Sky City from Azure Sky City to Azure Sky City. The Zishan Marquis mansion's beast carriage was luxuriously decorated. Yi Xing and the other 2 sat inside and the space seemed very spacious. Mu Feng asked the 2 of them, "What are your dreams?" After he finished speaking, he looked at Yi Xing first. Yi Xing himself had thought about this question countless times. He said, "I want to become an expert and become a martial saint. I want to stand at the peak of the martial path and take a look." Wei Qingxian nodded, "Me too." Martial saint, the peak of the martial path. Mu Feng smiled faintly, saying, "When you reach the Zishan Academy and come into contact with more martial arts knowledge, you will know that the martial path is broad and profound, far beyond your imagination." After a pause, Mu Feng continued, "It is a good thing that you have such a pure martial heart. I hope that you can keep it up and not be defeated by reality." Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian nodded, their gazes firm. Both of them had a very strong martial heart. Mu Feng felt the youthful vigor from the 2 and revealed a satisfied smile, saying, "Wei Qingxian, you were able to reach the peak of the 5th level at the age of 14. With such talent, even in the entire Zishan County, no one can compare to you. Your destiny is definitely not low. Yixing's heart trembled. The number of stars in the celestial azure city's younger generation's destiny was not a secret. However, Yixing had never heard of Wei Qingxuan's destiny before. Wei Qingxian was silent for a moment, then said, "Disciple is a 9-star destiny." 9-star destiny. Yixing secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. No wonder Wei Qingxuan's cultivation speed was so fast. She was actually a 9-star destiny. The legend of the Ya family's history, Yi Tianjue, was only an 8-star destiny. The monstrous junior of the Xiong family who entered the Zishan Academy's genius class, Xiong Qixing, was also only an 8-star destiny. In the history of Celestial Azure City, no one had ever heard of a 9-star destiny. Mu Feng was not surprised at all, as if Wei Qingxuan's 9-star destiny was a matter of course. Mu Feng said, "Your family's blood fate stone's grade is too low. At most, it can only measure a 9-star destiny. Your destiny may not only be 9 stars." Before Wei Qingxian could say anything, Yixing exclaimed, "Could it be that the 9-star destiny is not the highest?" Mu Feng knew why Yixing's emotions were fluctuating. He chuckled and said, "That's right. A 9-star destiny can naturally cultivate to the 9th level of the martial scholar realm. However, if one wants to cultivate to the martial saint realm, one needs luck. However, those with a higher destiny can naturally cultivate to the martial saint realm. For example, Zishan Marquis, he cultivated to the martial saint realm at the age of 17. Yixing and Wei Qingxian sucked in a breath of cold air. A 17-year-old martial saint. The two of them instantly thought of the red-clothed girl they met in the Azure Cloud Mountain range. She was also 17 or 18 years old. Wasn't she also a martial saint? It seemed that she was the same as Zishan Marquis, possessing a destiny that surpassed the 9-star destiny. Her cultivation process did not have any bottlenecks and she naturally cultivated to the martial saint realm. Yixing furrowed his brows. He had always thought that a 9-star fate mandate was the highest, which was why his 2-star fate mandate was the worst. Only now did he know that a 9-star fate mandate wasn't the limit, so his 2-star fate mandate was even worse. This made Yixing speechless. The original owner's aptitude was so poor that it angered both man and God. Fortunately, his astrology was extraordinary. Otherwise, his cultivation would be very difficult. Mu Feng noticed the change in Yixing's expression and said, "I've heard that you're a 2-star heavens mandate, but don't be discouraged because of this. You killed a 7th-stage martial Dao master when you're only at the 5th stage. This battle prowess is unique in the Zishan County. A person's aptitude is not only limited to heaven's mandate, but also the astrology." Hearing Mu Feng talk about astrology, Yixing immediately perked up his ears. His knowledge of astrology was almost zero. He could only rely on his intuition to know that his astrology was extraordinary. Speaking of which, the importance of astrology is not inferior to destiny. In fact, it might even surpass it. However, astrology will only manifest when you sense the power of the stars for the first time. There are very few people who understand astrology, so it's impossible to judge the level of astrology based on the manifested astrology. This information was useless, which made Yixing a little disappointed. However, Mu Feng's next words made Yixing's spirit rise. If you want to know the level of astrology, you have to cultivate to martial saint realm and awaken your astrology. After that, martial saints can use the power of astrology. A martial saint with a powerful astrology is extremely terrifying. Yixing's eyes lit up. After cultivating to martial saint realm, one's astrology would awaken and they would be able to use the power of astrology. He was very confident in his astrology. Therefore, if he became a martial saint, he would definitely be a powerful martial saint. This made Yixing look forward to cultivating to martial saint even more. He secretly decided that he must cultivate to martial saint realm as fast as possible. 1 year, at most 1 year, and I will become a martial saint. Zi Shanho and the red-clothed lady had both become martial saints at a young age. Yixing saw them as his goals. A year later, Yixing became a martial saint at the age of 17. He was about the same age as Zi Shanho and the red-clothed lady. Yixing, your heavenly fate realm is very low, but your cultivation is not slow. It can be seen that your astrology is better than most cultivators. Your battle prowess is extraordinary. If you become a martial saint one day and awaken your astrology, you will definitely amaze the world. Mu Feng stated his judgment of Yixing. He was quite optimistic about Yixing's future. However, he also sighed and said, "It is extremely difficult for a low heavenly fate realm cultivator to become a martial saint. I hope you will have the opportunity." After saying this, Mu Feng stopped talking with the two. He indicated for them to rest and then closed his eyes and sat down. Yixing and Wei Qingxian exchanged glances. They could see the admiration and encouragement in each other's eyes. They even seemed to have an unspoken agreement to become strong together and become martial saints. After that, the two also closed their eyes and rested. Yixing did not stay idle. A simulated human figure appeared in his super brain and he started to cultivate the martial techniques he had learned in the Xiong family's martial pavilion yesterday. Yixing had a feeling that the more martial techniques he cultivated, the more he understood them. Then, his attainments in martial techniques would be higher and it would be easier for him to cultivate to the martial saint realm. The journey was peaceful. At noon the next day, Yixing and the others arrived at Zishan County City and headed straight for Zishan Academy. Forcefully promote, why is there no improvement in the recommendation votes? Chocolate cried and begged his brothers and sisters for a recommendation vote. Can he make it to the top? Chapter 90. The Indigo Mountain Academy was located 3 miles east of the Indigo County City. Every 3 years, the Indigo Mountain Academy would recruit a new batch of students, and these students would study in the Indigo Mountain Academy for 6 years. Every batch would be divided into 11 classes, 10 ordinary classes, and 1 genius class. Each class had 70 students, and there were no changes. After graduating, the students would return to their hometowns. Those who performed well could work in the Indigo Mountain Academy or be recruited into the Indigo Marquis Manor. Yixing's batch of students who entered the academy were elementary students. The previous batch's students were automatically promoted to advanced students, and the previous batch's advanced students would graduate and leave. Mu Feng sent Yixing's group to the Indigo Mountain Academy, and there were naturally people from the academy to receive them. Yixing, you're a 2-star heavenly fate realm, and you'll be criticized in the genius class. The Indigo Mountain Academy isn't like other places, so you have to be patient and don't be arrogant. There's no need to pay attention to the rumors. Before Mu Feng left, he reminded Yixing, however, I'm not asking you to be a coward. A cultivator's dignity cannot be sullied, and the academy has its own rules. If someone breaks the rules to deal with you, feel free to retaliate. Your potential will definitely attract the attention of the Indigo Marquis, and if you're treated unfairly, the Marquis will not sit idly by. Many thanks, Master Mu. Yixing cupped his fists, feeling grateful in his heart. Mu Feng's job was to recruit students from Azure Sky City and escort them to the Indigo Mountain Academy. Now that his job was done, he naturally left. The 10 people from Azure Sky City were divided into 2 groups. Yi Yunlong and 8 other ordinary class students were brought away by a 7th-level martial Dao master. As for Yixing and Wei Qingxian, they were brought away by an 8th-level martial Dao master. Both of them were deacons of the academy, responsible for the discipline of the students. The 7th-level martial Dao master was the ordinary class deacon, and the 8th-level martial Dao master was the deacon of the Tiandu class. In the Indigo Mountain Academy, other than deacons, there were teachers, and they were one level higher than deacons. The deacons of the ordinary class were 7th level martial Dao masters, while the teachers were 8th level martial Dao masters. The deacons of the genius class were 8th level martial Dao masters, while the teachers were 9th level martial Dao masters. A portion of the upper management of the academy were teachers from the genius class. There were also a few who weren't in charge of teaching. They were the vice deans, and they were the highest level of the academy. Of course, strictly speaking, the highest authority should be Zi Shanho, because he was the dean of the Purple Mountain Academy. However, Zi Shanho rarely interfered with the affairs of the academy, so the ones in charge were the vice deans. Yixing, this is your student identity card. The number on it is your seat number in class and your room number. Wei Qingxian, this is yours. The Grand Master Deacon brought Yixing and Wei Qingxian to the front of a building and gave each of them a card. Both of their cards had the words Genius Class written on the front and different numbers on the back. One was 46 and the other was 47. There were a total of 70 people in the gifted class, so this card was definitely given out according to the order of registration. Those who were from the county capital would definitely be the first to arrive. Those 30 people would definitely be the first 30. As for the other cities, whoever arrived first would receive the card with the higher number. Yixing and Wei Qingxian didn't arrive too late. It could be seen that Tiansong City wasn't the furthest from the county capital. There were some cities even further away. The dormitories of the common class were 4 people sharing a room, while the genius class dormitories were 1 person per room. Therefore, the dormitories of the genius class didn't discriminate between males and females. Yixing was in room 46, while Wei Qingxian was in room 67. They should be next to each other. Your rooms are protected by a formation. Your identity card is the key to open the door. Today is the registration day. Go back to your rooms and rest. The Grand Master Deacon instructed the 2 of them and left. Yixing looked at the building in front of him. It was divided into 7 floors, and each floor had 10 rooms. On the opposite side of this building, there was another building that was almost identical except for the color. Each floor had 10 rooms, and there were 7 floors in total. Academy, tall building. This made Yixing sigh with emotion. He thought of his student days on Earth. However, the tall building in front of him had a strong ancient style and didn't have the slightest hint of modernity. It didn't give Yixing the wrong impression, and he quickly put away his emotions. Everything in the past was already a distant memory. The world he was in now was the most important. I wonder what this martial arts academy is like. Yixing thought to himself with a faint smile on his face. No matter what, he had already become a student of the Purple Mountain Academy's genius class. He was in a good mood today. Let's go up. Wei Qingxuan's voice came from the side. Yixing nodded, and the 2 of them walked up to the dormitory. The 2 of them walked to the staircase. Just as they were about to go up, the sound of hooves came from afar. Stop! A cold shout came. Yixing and Wei Qingxian turned around and saw several people in the distance. They were all young people around 18 or 19 years old. They were riding demon horses that were half the size of ordinary horses and were rushing towards them. The speed of these demon horses was very fast. They rushed to the front of the 2 in a few breaths. Some of them slowed down, but one of them didn't slow down and continued to rush towards Yixing and Wei Qingxian. Yixing's eyes narrowed. The person on the horse had a murderous intent towards him. The demon horse was tall and was a mid-level vicious beast. It rushed over with an intimidating aura. It was extremely frightening. Wei Qingxian was affected and couldn't help but take half a step back. At this time, Yixing took a step forward and blocked in front of Wei Qingxian. His expression didn't change. As a student of the Purple Mountain Academy, he was very sure that no one would dare to directly ride a horse and injure him. Hiss, sure enough, when the demon horse was a meter away from him, the person on the horse pulled the reins. The demon horse let out a long neigh and instantly stood up. After 2 breaths, the demon horse raised its 2 front hooves and stomped on the ground in front of Yixing. It made a loud thud. The horse's head was a foot in front of Yixing. The hot breath from the horse's nose directly rushed to Yixing's face, but Yixing's expression didn't change. He wasn't afraid at all. Yixing had his super brain scanning. If the demonic horse didn't stop, he was confident that he could take Wei Qingxian away the moment it crashed into them. But if the demonic horse stopped, he calculated that the demonic horse couldn't hurt him. Of course, he wasn't scared at all. The young man on the horse was the youngest among them. He shouldn't be more than 19 years old. Yixing's expression didn't change. He was slightly surprised, but it was immediately replaced by a fierce look. He glared at Yixing. His voice was cold and filled with killing intent. He shouted, "You're Yixing." Yixing nodded slightly. He looked at the man on the horse and said, "You're Xiong Qixing." Yixing didn't know anyone in the Purple Mountain Academy, but this person looked at him with killing intent. It was obvious that he had a death grudge with him. It could only be Xiong Qixing. Xiong Qixing had a good relationship in the Purple Mountain Academy. When the younger generation from Azure Sky City arrived, he received the news. Then, he rushed to the genius class dormitory. When Yixing and Wei Qingxian went upstairs, he just arrived. Xiong Qixing glared at Yixing and said, "Little bastard, I finally see you. What you did to my Xiong family, I will return it to you tenfold. I will make you die without a burial place." Facing Xiong Qixing's threat, Yixing smiled indifferently and said, "Little bastard, who are you scolding?" Xiong Qixing shouted, "Little bastard scolding you." Just as he finished speaking, Xiong Qixing felt that something was wrong. Yixing was already holding his stomach and laughing. "Little bastard scolding me, ha ha ha." Wei Qingxian, who was behind Yixing, couldn't help but let out a bell-like laughter. As for the other young people on the back of the demon horses, they held back their laughter and didn't dare to laugh out loud. Xiong Qixing's imposing aura was completely dispersed by Yixing's laughter. Xiong Qixing, who was on the horse, no longer felt high and mighty. Instead, he felt like a clown. This made Xiong Qixing extremely angry. He snorted and said, "Laugh all you want. Sooner or later, I will make you kneel in front of me and cry." Yixing also sneered and said disdainfully, "With just you?" Xiong Qixing's eyes were cold. He said, "You dare to look down on me?" Facing Xiong Qixing's oppressive aura, Yixing was like a spring breeze. His expression was normal, and he still looked disdainful. "You've been in the Zishan Academy for 3 years, and you're only at the 7th level of cultivation. May I ask, are you worthy of my respect?" Xiong Qixing shouted angrily, "Since you look down on me so much, do you dare to fight with me on the life and death arena?" Yixing was surprised. Xiong Qixing looked reckless, but he was actually quite scheming. His method of pretending to be angry was also a form of provocation. The life and death arena was a place where life and death would be determined as soon as one stepped on it. Xiong Qixing obviously wanted to provoke Yixing into going on the life and death arena. At that time, Yixing's life would be in his hands. However, Xiong Qixing underestimated Yixing too much. Yixing's heart was clear, so how could he be provoked by him? Just as he was about to speak, he felt his palm warm. It was grabbed by a warm and soft hand. Yixing turned his head and saw Wei Qingxian shaking her head at him. At the same time, she withdrew her warm and soft hand. Clearly, she was reminding Yixing not to be provoked by Xiong Qixing. Yixing nodded and smiled at Wei Qingxian. He turned around and said, Xiong Qixing, you're a student of the advanced genius class. Don't you feel ashamed to challenge me, a student of the elementary genius class who just entered the academy, to the life and death arena? If I were you, I'd directly buy a piece of tofu and kill myself. Yixing's words caused Xiong Qixing's expression to become even more gloomy. Without waiting for Xiong Qixing to speak again, Yixing laughed lightly and said disdainfully, however, I really do look down on you. I've entered Zishan Academy for 3 months. In 3 months' time, I'll beat you until you're looking for your teeth on the ground. You won't be able to tell north from south. Xiong Qixing's eyes narrowed. He said coldly, fine, I'll wait for you for 3 months. I'd like to see who's looking for their teeth on the ground after 3 months, and who's the one who won't be able to tell north from south. Go! Xiong Qixing waved to the others and immediately urged his horse to leave. However, after only 30 meters, Xiong Qixing reined in his horse and stopped. He turned around and looked at Yixing. His gaze was disdainful, genius class student. Haha, you're not worthy, and you're not. Then, Xiong Qixing laughed loudly and urged his horse to leave. He disappeared from Yixing's and Wei Qingxuan's sight. There's a third update tonight. I'm crying for a recommendation vote. Brothers, what do you think of Wei Qingxuan's portrait? I think it's super beautiful. I'm very satisfied. Follow Lord Chocolate. Everyone. Wei. Mail, EK Chocolate. You can receive portraits of the various characters of the Arrow God from the publishing house. Chapter 91. Xiong Qixing is famous in Azure Sky City, but in reality, he's only so-so. Wei Qingxian commented as she watched Xiong Qixing's departing figure. 3 years ago, Wei Qingxian was only an 11-year-old girl, while Xiong Qixing was a 15-year-old genius, a proud son of heaven in Azure Sky City. At that time, Wei Qingxian had just started cultivating and had never met Xiong Qixing. She had only heard of Xiong Qixing's fame. Although he was only 15 years old, all the juniors in Azure Sky City under the age of 25 could not raise their heads. Therefore, to Wei Qingxian at that time, Xiong Qixing was a high and mighty existence. Even when Wei Qingxian rose to prominence in Celestial Azure City, and all the cultivators said that she was more talented than Xiong Qixing, she didn't have the slightest intention of belittling Xiong Qixing. However, the current Wei Qingxian, through the conversation with Mu Feng on the way, had broadened her horizons. When she saw Xiong Qixing again, she no longer had the feeling of looking up to him. She felt that Xiong Qixing was ordinary and nothing more. Yixing, on the other hand, had long set the martial saint realm as his goal. From the beginning, he did not think that Xiong Qixing was amazing. Now, he naturally did not put him in his eyes. He would soon step into the 6th stage of the martial Dao, while Xiong Qixing had not stepped into the 8th stage of the martial Dao. It would not be difficult to catch up to him. However, what puzzled Yixing was that when Xiong Qixing left, he said that he was not worthy and was not a student of the gifted class. What did that mean? Wei Qingxian was also not clear about this point. The two of them went upstairs. Rooms 46 and 47 were right next to each other. The two of them smiled at each other and used their identity cards to open the door. Then, they entered their respective rooms. Yixing had learned a lot of martial arts from the Xiong family. He needed time to practice and integrate them. After entering the room, he continued to use his super brain to simulate a human form to practice. The first day of entering the academy passed peacefully. The next day, Yixing finally understood what Xiong Qixing meant when he left. That was because the people in charge of recruiting students in the various cities didn't limit the number of people they could recruit. If they found someone good, they would accept them. If they didn't, they wouldn't accept a single one. It just so happened that there were more talented juniors in this batch. The number of students in the genius class had exceeded the quota of 70, reaching 76. In other words, there were 6 more spots. This kind of situation had happened before. That was because Zishan Academy's genius class had a fixed quota of 70 people. Therefore, if there were more than 70 people in the genius class, a few more would be eliminated and transferred to the ordinary class. Similarly, if there were less than 70 spots, it would mean that there were too many spots in the ordinary class. Then, a few outstanding students from the ordinary class would be promoted to the genius class. This way, the ordinary class and the genius class would always remain at 770 spots. Yuan Dao had entered Zishan Academy before. He had told Yixing that if the number of students in the genius class exceeded the quota, the weakest few would be eliminated. Most of the students who were recruited into the genius class were in the 6th rank. A small portion of them were in the 5th rank. Therefore, Yixing couldn't be eliminated based on strength. However, the elimination rules had changed this time. This batch of students in the genius class exceeded the quota by 6. Among you, 6 of you will be eliminated from the genius class and transferred to the ordinary class. Mo Xiaozong, a 9th-stage martial scholar and the teacher of Zishan Academy's junior genius class, stood in front of all the students and said with a serious expression, "I heard that the reason why the quota exceeded the quota this time was because some of the students with ordinary or even poor aptitudes used their connections to enter the genius class to fish in troubled waters. The Academy is determined to crack down on such people. Therefore, those with low heavenly fate and poor aptitudes will be eliminated first." As he spoke, Mo Xiaozong's gaze swept across the students in the genius class. His gaze paused on Yixing for a moment. Beside Mo Xiaozong, Xiong Qixing was also looking at Yixing with a face full of smiles. At this moment, how could Yixing not understand that Xiong Qixing's method of eliminating people based on heavenly fate and not strength? Xiong Qixing's master was one of the vice principals of Zishan Academy. He did have some ability in the academy. The master-disciple relationship was much closer than the teacher-student relationship. Perhaps the vice principal didn't need to personally make an appearance. Just the fact that Xiong Qixing was the vice principal's personal disciple was enough to make the teacher change a little. Yixing's expression didn't change, but anger had already risen in his heart. The difference between the gifted class and the ordinary class wasn't just in name. There was also a huge difference in the treatment they received. The ordinary class was taught by an 8th-stage martial scholar, while the genius class was taught by a 9th-stage martial scholar. Obviously, the 9th-stage martial scholar had a deeper understanding of martial arts and taught better. However, Yixing didn't care about this. He was better than any teacher. But there was another difference that made Yixing's heart ache. The students of the ordinary class could receive 1 high-grade star accumulating pill per month, while the students of the genius class could receive 2 star accumulating pills per month. The importance of the star accumulating pill was needless to say. It was directly linked to a cultivator's cultivation. Naturally, the more one had, the faster one's cultivation would be. If he was eliminated from the genius class, the number of high-grade star accumulating pills he could receive would be reduced by half. How could he not be angry? Although he knew that the other party was deliberately targeting him, it was related to his interests. Yixing had to argue and said, "Teacher Mo, I heard that the school's previous rule is to eliminate people based on their strength." Mo Xiaozong nodded with a smile and said, "This student is right. Aptitude is important, but so is strength. So, if a student is eliminated because of a low heaven's fate, he can prove his strength if he thinks he is strong." Speaking of this, Mo Xiaozong introduced Xiong Qixing next to him. "This is Xiong Qixing, a student of the advanced genius class. He will test the strength of the eliminated students. If Xiong Qixing thinks his strength is qualified, he can continue to join the genius class." Next to him, Xiong Qixing nodded with a smile, but his eyes were fierce, constantly sweeping over Yixing, F***ck. Yixing suddenly clenched his fists, his heart was burning with anger. He was not joining the advanced genius class. How could he compete with Xiong Qixing? Yixing understood that not only did the other party want to force him out of the genius class, but he also wanted to give him no room to resist. If Yixing insisted that he was strong and should not be eliminated, then he would have to fight with Xiong Qixing. Xiong Qixing's cultivation was at the peak of 7th stage, and Yixing had not stepped into the 6th stage of martial path. Even if he had a bow and arrow, it would be difficult for him to be Xiong Qixing's opponent. Moreover, in a battle of strength, how could Yixing be allowed to use a bow and arrow? Therefore, once they fought, not only would Yixing not be able to enter the genius class, he would also die miserably. Wei Qingxian was standing next to Yixing. She naturally heard that this elimination plan was targeted at Yixing. Seeing Yixing clenching his fists and his shoulders trembling, it was obvious that he was extremely angry. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Yixing, bear with it for now. After this, go to the Zishan Marquis residence and tell Grandmaster Mu Feng about this. Grandmaster Mu Feng will not sit idly by. Wei Qingxuan's soft hand held Yixing's fist and whispered in Yixing's ear. Feeling the softness on the back of his hand, Yixing's heart stirred, and his anger immediately dissipated. For some reason, perhaps because he was emotional, Wei Qingxuan's warm and soft hand made Yixing feel at ease. Yixing loosened his fist and naturally grabbed Wei Qingxuan's slender hand. This made the anger in Yixing's heart completely dissipate. This made Yixing understand that when a person was angry, they needed someone close to them to accompany them. Yixing did not look at Wei Qingxian, and Wei Qingxian did not look at Yixing either. However, when the two of them held hands, neither of them flinched, appearing very natural. At this moment, an indescribable feeling spread in the hearts of the two of them. When Xiong Qixing saw Yixing and Wei Qingxuan's actions, the corners of his eyes twitched, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. In the letter that Xiong Baotian gave him, not only did he want him to deal with Yixing, but he also wanted him to be on good terms with Wei Qingxian, and marry Wei Qingxian in the future. In Xiong Qixing's eyes, Wei Qingxian was already his woman. At this moment, when he saw Yixing and Wei Qingxian holding hands, how could he not be angry in his heart? Little bastard, forcing you into the ordinary class is only the first step. I will force you into a dead end step by step. In Celestial Azure City, you are full of glory, but in the Purple Mountain Academy, in front of me, Xiong Qixing, you are just an ant, at my mercy. Xiong Qixing narrowed his eyes as he viciously thought in his heart. Under Mo Xiaozong's supervision, the students in the genius class tested their heavenly fate one by one. Most of them were 7-star heavenly fate, but there were also some who were 8-star and 6-star heavenly fate. When it was Yixing's turn, he was only a 2-star heavenly fate, which immediately caused a burst of laughter. Those who were able to enter the Purple Mountain Academy's genius class were all geniuses of their city. Among these geniuses, there were only a few 6-star heavenly fate, and they belonged to the bottom. Yixing's 2-star heavenly fate was even more conspicuous. This 2-star heavenly fate dared to talk about strength earlier. Teacher Mo said that he was the one who relied on the Marquis Manor's connections to enter the genius class. That's him, right? Ha ha ha, what a joke. Many students in the genius class mocked Yixing. Most of them were 8-star heavenly fate, and some were 7-star heavenly fate. They thought that they were peerless geniuses and were ashamed to be in the same class as a 2-star heavenly fate. Even though there were heaven-defying geniuses among low-level heaven's mandate cultivators, the proportion was too small. Not even 1 in 10,000 would be able to rise. Thus, all the geniuses mocked Yixing for being a 2-star heaven's mandate. Wei Qingxian unhappily walked out and said, "You're mocking Yixing's low heavenly fate. do you think that you're a peerless genius? There's always a taller mountain. How can true talent be judged by heavenly fate alone? Moreover, even if we're talking about heavenly fate, you're only so-so. What qualifications do you have to mock others? Wei Qingxian was protecting Yixing, so she couldn't help but change the way she addressed him. This was also the reason why their relationship was getting closer. An 8-star genius saw that Wei Qingxian was with Yixing and instinctively said with disdain, "You're too arrogant. A mere 2-star heavenly fate is thousands of miles away from us. Why can't we mock you? You keep saying that we don't have talent, but how many stars do you have?" Chapter 92. That's right. Who do you think you are? How many stars do you have? Being in the same team as a 2-star heavenly mandate, he should also be a piece of trash. What right does he have to criticize us? The 8-star Destiny Realm cultivators who had just mocked Yixing also mocked him one after another. Yixing was already immune to the mockery of others. He wasn't angry at all and his expression was normal. However, at this moment, Yixing's face revealed a strange expression. It was one thing for these genius students to mock him, but they actually wanted to mock Wei Qingxian. This time, their faces would probably be slapped swollen. When had Wei Qingxian ever been called a piece of trash? Her face immediately turned pale as she placed her hand on the blood life stone. In an instant, the blood life stone glowed and the 9-star slots lit up one after another. The students immediately stopped mocking him. Previously, no one had ever been able to make the blood life stone glow so brightly or make the star slots light up so quickly. Almost in the blink of an eye, 3 lit up. In the next blink, 6 lit up. In the next blink, 9 lit up. All 9 star slots were lit up. 9-star destiny. Apart from Yixing, who already knew this would happen, all the cultivators present were shocked and dumbfounded. A 9-star Destiny Realm cultivator could cultivate to the 9th stage of the martial path. Basically, they could become a grandmaster before the age of 20, which was a level higher than an 8-star Destiny Realm cultivator. Even though the Violet Mountain Academy was known as the Cradle of Geniuses, it was rare for a 9-star Heaven's Mandate to appear in each batch. With a higher fate star, one's future achievements would be one level higher. Although it was not absolute, it could be said to be absolute. Among 10,000 people, at least 9,999 would be like this. Only the other 1 in 10,000 would be able to surpass those with a higher destiny through luck and fortune. Those with a higher destiny than him were almost negligible. The 8-star destiny students who mocked Wei Qingxian earlier felt their faces burning. If she was trash, then they were trash among trash. Wei Qingxian recalled what Mu Feng had said. Her heavenly fate might not be limited to 9 stars. Hence, she did not move her hand away when all 9-star slots were lit up. The red light in the 9-star slots of the blood life stone became more and more intense and dazzling. However, there were no other changes. He didn't know if it was because the blood fate stone's grade was too low and couldn't determine a fate beyond 9 stars, or if Wei Qingxuan's fate was only 9 stars. Even if Wei Qingxian was only a 9-star Heaven's Mandate, one could tell from the blinding light that her aptitude might be higher than ordinary 9-star Heaven's Mandates. Looking at the dazzling red light, the hearts of the students changed and they looked up to Wei Qingxian. From this moment onwards, Wei Qingxian became a popular figure in the junior gifted class. Although Wei Qingxuan's face was covered with a veil and the students couldn't see her face, they automatically imagined Wei Qingxian to be a peerless beauty. The female students were naturally envious and jealous, while the male students were all over the moon and treated Wei Qingxian as their goddess. Wei Qingxuan's 9-star Heaven's Mandate shocked Xiong Qixing too. He stared blankly, which made him even more confident. "She's mine. She's mine. I must make her my woman. As for Mo Xiaozong, when he saw the powerful red light, his eyes flashed with shock as he thought of an even more shocking result. Seeing that there were no other changes to the Blood Life Stone, Wei Qingxian lowered her hand in disappointment. Wei Qingxian didn't rush back to the students. Instead, she said to Mo Xiaozong, "Teacher Mo, although I'm a 9-star heaven's mandate and my cultivation is higher than Yixing's, my strength can't compare to Yixing's. Yixing's future won't be below mine either. Why can't he be in the gifted class?" Mo Xiaozong wanted to refute, but he hesitated when he thought of Wei Qingshuan's aptitude. Mo Xiaozong used to be the top genius of the Indigo Mountain Academy's gifted class. After graduating, he stayed in the academy to work. First, he was a deacon of the gifted class. Later, he broke through to the 9th level and became a teacher of the gifted class. Other than the vice principals, he was also a top figure in the Indigo Mountain Academy. If Wei Qingxian was also a 9-star heaven's mandate, he naturally wouldn't hesitate. However, he knew that the Blood Life Stone was of the lowest grade and couldn't test a higher mandate. After Wei Qingxian was tested as a 9-star heaven's mandate, the bright red light it emitted was much stronger than his. This made Mo Xiaozong wonder if Wei Qingshuan's mandate had surpassed the 9-star heaven's mandate and reached the Martial Saint heaven's mandate. If that was the case, then Wei Qingxian was a future Martial Saint. This made Mo Xiaozong apprehensive. Mo Xiaozong had his misgivings, but Xiong Qixing had no misgivings. He already regarded Wei Qingxian as his woman. How could he let Yixing stay in the gifted class? Naturally, he wanted to trample Yixing to death and completely cut off Wei Qingshuan's thoughts. Xiong Qixing said, "Junior Qingxian, you're wrong. You're a 9-star heaven's mandate and your future is bright. He's only a 2-star heaven's mandate. Even if he has some good fortune and his strength is greater than yours now, how can he compare to you in the future?" He. Xiong Qixing said with a smile. He glanced at the other students and continued, "Let alone you, junior sister apprentice Qingxian, even the other juniors are not comparable to that trash. The students of the gifted class can at least become martial Dao masters in the future, but he..." Xiong Qixing's gaze fell on Yixing and his tone became extremely disdainful. "Once you've had a fortuitous encounter, it's hard for you to have it a second time. How can you be blessed with providence every time? If he's really lucky and can become a martial Dao master in the future, then he can be accepted into the gifted class. But now, he can't be placed in the gifted class just based on his current strength. He doesn't have that qualification." Xiong Qixing's tone became gloomy. His eyes narrowed and a cold light flashed. He stared at Yixing like a vicious snake and let out a sneer. He. Unless he can pass my test, then his trash aptitude can be ignored and he can continue to be a student of the gifted class. Yixing, do you have the guts to let me test your strength? Everyone looked at Yixing. They could tell from Xiong Qixing's tone that Xiong Qixing was targeting Yixing. If Yixing dared to accept the challenge, he would definitely be beaten up badly. Xiong Qixing tried his best to make Yixing take the initiative to fight with him, but Yixing wouldn't fall for it. He smiled indifferently and said, "I'd better go to the ordinary class. But don't worry, even if I'm in the ordinary class, it'll be easy for me to beat you in 3 months." Yixing wasn't afraid of making a big deal out of it. Only a few people knew about the 3-month agreement yesterday, but today, he wanted everyone to know. "Didn't you want to step on me? Then I'll step on you to death." A student of the elite class, an 8-star Heaven's Mandate Realm genius, was defeated by a new student who just entered the academy for 3 months. "Let's see where you'll put your face at that time. You forced me to go to the ordinary class. When the time comes, the ordinary class new student will defeat you in 3 months. It'll only make you look more like a failure." Yixing thought in his heart. He didn't have the thought of going to the Marquis's mansion to report this matter to Grandmaster Mu Feng. If he needed to find connections and rely on others to solve a small problem, it would only prove his incompetence. So what if he was in the ordinary class? Although it was less than half of the star accumulating pill, Yixing believed that he wouldn't stay in the ordinary class for long. When he defeated Xiong Qixing in front of everyone, the academy would invite him back to the elite class. Otherwise, if a student from the ordinary class was above the elite class, everyone would say that the academy was blind. Yixing didn't accept the challenge, which made Xiong Qixing very depressed. As a student of the elite class, he couldn't deal with Yixing for no reason. If he did, he would be cursed as a senior bullying a junior. The Indigo Mountain Academy was very particular about its reputation. Therefore, without a suitable excuse, he really couldn't harm Yixing's life. He could only suppress Yixing, but at most, he could only force Yixing to go to the ordinary class. He couldn't force Yixing to drop out because he didn't have that ability. Soon, all the students finished testing their heavenly fate. Apart from Yixing, the lowest heavenly fate was 9 6-star heavenly fate. Among them, there were naturally 5 unlucky people who were picked out and assigned to the ordinary class along with Yixing. Because in order to prove their strength, they needed to fight Xiong Qixing. Those 5 unlucky people didn't dare to challenge a senior from the elite class. Their names were confirmed. After handing over his elite class identity card, Yixing received his ordinary class identity card. His number was Ordinary Class 10, Room 175. Yixing, go find Grandmaster Mu. Grandmaster Mu will definitely uphold justice for you. Wei Qingxian was very indignant about this. Yixing patted her shoulder and said, "There's no need to trouble Grandmaster Mu with such a small matter. I can handle it myself. Just watch, it won't be long before the academy takes the initiative to invite me back to the elite class." Yixing and the 5 6-star heavenly fate were sent to the ordinary class's dormitory by the academy's deacon. On the way, Xiong Qixing caught up and called Yixing to the side. He whispered, "Trash, when you're in the ordinary class, I'll have plenty of chances to kill you." Yixing's eyes were like knives as he stared at Xiong Qixing with a look of contempt. "Bring it on. If you can't kill me, 3 months later, I'll make you the biggest joke of the Purple Mountain Academy. At that time, let's see if you still have the face to live in this world." Xiong Qixing's eyes were cold as he said, "Do you think you can still live for 3 months? Hee, so what if you can live for 3 months? It won't be long before I step into the 8th stage of the martial Dao and become a martial scholar. At that time, we'll see who lives and who dies." With that, Xiong Qixing turned to leave. But suddenly, he thought of something and turned back to continue speaking. "When I become an 8th stage martial scholar, I'll ask my master for a marriage between me and Wei Qingxian. You should know that my master is the Vice Principal Wang. If the Vice Principal wants a marriage, who dares to disobey? Ha! Only 1 place away from the overall ranking. Brothers, every vote has the chance to send the Archer God to the overall ranking. Please recommend it." In addition, Qi is making a list of the best works of 2014. You can vote for the Archer God on the Archer God's homepage. And the Archer God was released on the 11th of November 2014. Naturally, it's a work of 2014. If you think the Archer God is good, please vote for it. Chapter 93. As Xiong Qixing left, Yixing's eyes flashed with a cold, murderous glint. Yixing really wanted to kill Xiong Qixing. If he had the chance, he would not let it go. The deacons did not care about the conflicts between the students. They would only intervene if a fight broke out in front of them. Naturally, they did not interfere with Yixing and Xiong Qixing. When Yixing returned, the deacon sent the 6 of them to the ordinary class dormitory and left. The ordinary class had already been allocated to different classes and dormitories, so the 6 people who came later were all allocated to ordinary class 10. 2 of them were in dormitory 174, and 4 were in dormitory 175. The other 3 who were allocated to dormitory 175 with Yi Crossing were Wu Yuan, Massachusetts Bo, and Nie Dong. The 3 of them were young, about the same age as Yixing. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo's cultivation were at the mid-6th level, while Nie Dong was at the peak of the 6th level. In terms of destiny and cultivation, the 3 of them were on par with Gu Yijin and Xiong Qifeng. However, the 3 of them were 1 year younger than Gu Yijin and Xiong Qifeng, so their potential was greater. They were recruited into the genius class by the Marquis residence, who was in charge of recruiting students. Yixing had just entered the dormitory when he suddenly felt a gust of wind at the back of his head. Nie Dong, who was walking behind Yixing, suddenly attacked and threw a punch at the back of Yixing's head. Nie Dong had been at the peak of the 6th level for a longer time than Xiong Qifeng. His cultivation was more stable, and his inner force was more vigorous. The power of his punch was terrifying. Although Yixing had perfected the bronze tactic, he had not mastered the iron head technique. The back of his head would definitely not be able to withstand this punch. Nie Dong's punch came extremely quickly, and it was beyond Yixing's expectations. However, Yixing's reaction was extremely fast, and he immediately stepped into the Big Dipper. Stage of transformation, 7 stars step. Just as Nie Dong's fist was about to land on the back of Yixing's head, Yixing's body transformed into a series of afterimages. In the blink of an eye, he dashed forward and appeared on the other side of the dormitory, dodging the punch. "You dare to sneak attack me?" Yixing's eyes were like swords as he stared at Nie Dong and shouted. If his 7-star steps hadn't reached perfection, he definitely wouldn't have been able to dodge that punch. If the opponent's sneak attack had been ordered by Xiong Qixing, the consequences would have been unimaginable. If a high-ranked student bullied a low-ranked student, it would affect the academy's reputation and the academy would punish them severely. However, fights between freshmen were common and there was nothing they could do about it. Geniuses of the younger generation were proud and arrogant. When geniuses from different places gathered together, it was very normal for fights to break out. If one were to accidentally injure the other party in a fight, although they would be punished by the academy, it would be relatively light. Flames of anger burned in Yixing's eyes. There was already a ball of fire in his heart, and Nie Dong's actions had completely ignited it. Moreover, he had no grudge against Nie Dong. Why would the latter attack him? It was very likely that he had been ordered by Xiong Qixing. This made Yixing even angrier. Nie Dong was surprised that Yixing had dodged the punch. His face was filled with surprise. Coupled with Yixing's shout, Nie Dong's eyes suddenly darted away. A flaw appeared in his heart. However, Nie Dong's dodging gaze only lasted for a moment. He calmed down and glared at Nie Dong. "That's right. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been kicked out of the gifted class. Today, I'll beat you to death." Behind him, Wu Yuan and Ma Bo walked in and slammed the dormitory door shut. They stood on either side of Nie Dong and glared at Yixing fiercely. Ma Bo sneered. Wu Yuan said, "That's right. It's all because of you that we were kicked out of the gifted class. Today, we'll beat you to death." Seeing that the 3 of them seemed to have made an agreement, Yixing sneered in his heart. How could he not understand that the 3 of them must have been ordered by Xiong Qixing? Otherwise, even if the 3 of them were dissatisfied with him, they wouldn't have jumped out together to deal with him, a LV5 martial artist. "Xiong Qixing ordered you to deal with me." Yixing's sharp gaze swept across the faces of the 3 of them. After all, the 3 of them were young and not too shrewd. When Yixing said the truth, their expressions changed slightly. Of course, they knew that this matter couldn't be exposed. They tried their best to hide the panic in their hearts and tried their best to appear angry. What nonsense are you talking about? We don't even know Senior Xiong, Ma Bo said, pretending to be calm. Nie Dong was obviously the leader of the three. He waved his hand and said, "Don't talk nonsense with this trash. Beat him to death." Xiong Qixing had told the three of them that Yixing's strength was not weaker than any of them. That was why Nie Dong had launched a sneak attack on Yixing when he entered the dormitory. Since the sneak attack failed, the three of them naturally had to work together to deal with Yixing. Xiong Qixing had already told them how to deal with the aftermath after beating Yixing to death. They would say that Yixing had gone berserk in the dormitory because he was kicked out of the gifted class and wanted to kill people. In order to protect themselves, the three of them had mistakenly killed Yixing while resisting. As Nie Dong spoke, he took out a dagger from his sleeve. The dagger shone with a cold light. Its grade was no lower than the one Yixing had obtained from the masked assassin. It was obviously an upper-grade weapon. The three of them attacked at the same time. Nie Dong used the dagger technique, Wu Yuan used the fist technique, and Ma Bo used the palm technique. All of them were upper-grade martial arts techniques as they attacked Yixing. Even though Xiong Qixing had warned them that Yixing's strength was not weaker than any of them, the three of them did not think much of Yixing. They were the top geniuses in their respective cities and were all level 6 martial artists. In their opinion, it would be easy for the three of them to kill a level 5 martial artist if they worked together. However, they were wrong. Very wrong. Yixing, who had used the 7-star steps of the Transcendent Realm, dodged Wu Yuan's fist like a phantom. At the same time, his fists moved and turned into countless fist shadows. It was the upper-grade martial arts technique, Thousand Shadow Fist. Bam 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 bam, before Nie Dong's dagger and Ma Bo's fist landed on Yixing, the two of them were hit several times by Yixing and were forced to retreat. The two of them vomited blood. They were severely injured, especially Nie Dong, who was Yixing's main target. Nie Dong even vomited pieces of his internal organs. It was obvious that Yixing had hit him hard. This was not a competition in the arena. Yixing had no intention of hiding his strength. Once he used the Thousand Shadow Fist, no one under the level 7 could match him, unless the opponent was a martial Dao master. The three of them together were no match for Yixing. In one move, Nie Dong and Ma Bo were both severely injured. Wu Yuan was horrified and quickly retreated. However, the dormitory was only so big. Where could he retreat to? Yixing's 7-star steps was so fast that he appeared in front of Wu Yuan in the blink of an eye. The dense fist shadows continued to attack. It was the Thousand Shadow Fist again. "Spare me!" Wu Yuan screamed. Bang 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 bang, after a few deep sounds, Wu Yuan was sent flying by Yixing. He also vomited blood and was severely injured. In 2 moves, the three of them were completely defeated. They were all injured by Yixing. At this time, Ma Bo, who was slightly injured, had already gotten up from the ground and rushed to the door. If the door was open, he could rush out of the dormitory in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, they had locked the door. Before Ma Bo could use his identity card to open the door, Yixing was already behind him. He grabbed his collar and slapped Ma Bo back. With Yixing blocking the door, the other three in the dormitory were like turtles in a jar. At this time, the three of them were no longer arrogant. Only fear and shock remained in their eyes. They never imagined that Yixing's strength had reached such a level. Yixing walked step by step toward the three of them. Nie Dong supported himself against the wall and stood up. He looked at Yixing with fear and said sternly, "What are you trying to do?" Yixing's eyes were cold. "Didn't Xiong Qixing tell you that I'm very dangerous?" As soon as he finished speaking, Yixing's figure flashed and appeared in front of Niedong. Yixing hit Niedong's mute acupoint and then, meridian cutting palm. Niedong's eyes widened. The intense pain in his body almost made his eyeballs pop out. He was sweating profusely. However, with his pu acupoint hit, Niedong could not scream no matter how much pain he was in. He could only see the shock, pain, and fear in his eyes. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo were even more terrified than Niedong. They were about to scream for help when Yixing hit their mute acupoints with 2 fingers. Then, with a cold flash, the dagger in Niedong's hand was snatched away by Yixing. He slit their throats. They immediately felt the sharp aura on their necks, which made their hair stand on end. "Do you want to live or die?" Yixing asked with a smile on his face. Yixing's smile did not make them feel at all friendly. They only felt danger. They nodded repeatedly. Obviously, they wanted to live. Yixing first cut his shoulder with the dagger. Blood immediately flowed out and dyed his clothes red. He hit the wound's acupoint to stop the bleeding. Then, he put Wu Yuan and Ma Bo's hands together and stuffed the dagger into their hands. He glanced at Niedong and said, "Kill him and you'll live. I'll give you 3 breaths. If you don't, he'll live and you'll die." Wu Yuan and Ma Bo shook their heads repeatedly. Their eyes were filled with fear. Yixing looked at the 2 with a smile and started counting. 1, 2. When he said 2, the smile on Yixing's face disappeared. It was replaced by a solemn killing intent. His gaze also became sharp. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo's hands were trembling. They looked at each other and saw the struggle in each other's eyes. 3. Yixing's voice was cold and indifferent. Whoosh! At this moment, Wu Yuan and Ma Bo felt a terrifying killing intent from Yixing. They did not dare to hesitate. Both of them held their daggers and stabbed Niedong in the heart. Niedong died silently. His eyes were wide open. He clearly did not expect that he would die like this. Seeing Niedong's terrifying gaze, Wu Yuan and Ma Bo retreated at the same time. Their faces were filled with panic and fear. Yixing said from the side, "Ma Bo was kicked out of the gifted class, so he went berserk in the dormitory. He ambushed the 3 of us and tried to kill us. All 3 of us were injured and almost lost our lives. In order to protect ourselves, we had no choice but to resist Niedong and accidentally killed him. Am I right?" Wu Yuan and Ma Bo were like drowning people who grabbed onto a piece of wood. Their eyes lit up and they nodded repeatedly. Chapter 94. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo killing Niedong with their own hands was equivalent to showing their loyalty to Yixing. The 2 of them didn't dare to reveal the truth. Otherwise, Yixing would naturally be punished. However, the 2 of them were the ones who killed Niedong, so their punishment would be even heavier than Yixing's. Their lives might even be in danger. The only way was to agree with Yixing's statement and say that Niedong was possessed by a demon and went berserk in the dormitory. He ambushed them, and they retaliated by mistake. Only then would they be punished lightly by the academy. Yixing unsealed their mute acupoints and said, "What did Xiong Qixing tell you? Tell me everything." Xiong Qixing wasn't just a student of the advanced genius class. He was also an 8-star heavenly mandate genius and the vice principal's disciple. Even now, the 2 of them were still afraid of Xiong Qixing and didn't dare to betray him. Yixing said, "Your lives are still in my hands. Do you think you can live if you don't make things clear?" Wu Yuan and Ma Bo glanced at each other. They both knew that Yixing wasn't someone easy to deal with. Now that their lives were in Yixing's hands, if they didn't make things clear and let him feel at ease, Yixing wouldn't let them off. "Xiong wants us to kill you in the dormitory and say that you were expelled from the gifted class and went berserk. You ambushed the three of us in the dormitory. The three of us fought back together and killed you by mistake. This way, we'll only receive a lighter punishment from the academy. After this, Senior Xiong promised to transfer us back to the gifted class as soon as possible. Senior Brother Yi, you know Senior Xiong's connections in the academy. We betrayed him and he will definitely take revenge. We're willing to follow Senior Brother Ye's lead and ask for your protection. Since they had decided not to listen to Xiong Qixing, they naturally had to stand with Yixing. Moreover, the two of them had witnessed Yixing's terrifying strength and were truly shocked in their hearts. It could be said that they were sincerely convinced of Yixing's strength. They were also very optimistic about Yixing's future. Perhaps in the future, Yixing would really achieve great things and they would be able to benefit from it. Yixing had little influence in the Purple Mountain Institute. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo were in the same dormitory as him. If he could use them, it would be for the best. Yixing nodded and said, "Since you are on my side, I will naturally not let you be harmed by Xiong Qixing. However, if you want me to trust you, this is not enough. You have to write down what Xiong Qixing said to you, sign it and give it to me. If you listen to me, this proof of loyalty will never be seen by anyone. Otherwise, you know what will happen." Yes, we will listen to Senior Brother Yi. Although they were still somewhat unwilling in their hearts, since they had made a decision, they naturally could not be half-hearted. They could only write down a true proof of loyalty. The matter of Nie Dong going crazy in the dormitory and sneaking up on Yixing, Wu Yuan, and Ma Bo, only to be mistakenly killed by the three of them, quickly spread throughout the Purple Mountain Institute. A fight between new students, no matter how fierce it was a small matter. However, once a life was lost, it was a big matter. The entire institute was alarmed. Although there were students who died every year in the Purple Mountain Institute, some of them died in fights. This was the first time someone had died on the first day of school. Are you sure what you said is the truth? Nie Dong really went crazy in the dormitory. Sneak attacked you. If there is any falsehood, not only will you be punished for murder, but you will also be punished for bullying your superiors. The teacher in charge of Ordinary Class 10, Cui Haoren, looked sternly at Yixing, Wu Yuan, and Ma Bo as he interrogated them. On the side, there were many other teachers who were eyeing Yixing and the other two like tigers watching their prey. Moreover, there were many students nearby who were watching. Even students from the genius class had rushed over after hearing the news. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo were nervous, but Yixing's expression was calm as he said, Nie Dong was still brooding over being eliminated from the genius class and harbored a grudge against me. As soon as we entered the dormitory, he launched a sneak attack on me. Fortunately, this student dodged quickly and only received a dagger wound on my shoulder. Otherwise, this student would already be a dead man if he slit my throat. Yixing's words were false but true. Thus, he spoke with great confidence and conviction. After that, it was thanks to Wu Yuan and Ma Bo's help that I managed to escape from Nie Dong's hands. However, Nie Dong was too strong. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo couldn't bear to fight to the death at first and were also heavily injured by Nie Dong. In the end, we could only fight with our lives on the line. Nie Dong couldn't withstand the combined forces of the three of us and was accidentally killed by us in a battle of life and death, resulting in a tragedy. Wu Yuan also nodded and said, this student was heavily injured by Nie Dong and was almost stabbed in the heart by his dagger. Fortunately, Senior Brother Yi injured Nie Dong with his pulse-severing palm and I managed to snatch the dagger back. At that time, I panicked and stabbed forward. At that time, I didn't intend to stab Nie Dong's heart, so this student stopped halfway because, Ma Bo continued, because when Nie Dong was injured by Senior Brother Ye's pulse-severing palm, his body paused for a moment and he was hit by a few punches from me. His body hit the wall and bounced back. Unfortunately, he hit the dagger in Wu Yuan's hand, right at his heart. He died instantly. We wanted to save him, but it was already too late. Naturally, Yixing and the other two had already planned out their excuses. Their words were watertight and he finally concluded. Nie Dong was our roommate, but he was accidentally killed by the three of us. Although he was the one who injured us first, the three of us still blame ourselves and are willing to accept the Academy's punishment. The wounds on Nie Dong's body and the dagger that pierced his heart were reasonable and without any flaws. Almost everyone believed the three of them. However, there was one person who didn't believe them. Xiong Qixing said loudly, "Liar, they're lying. Nie Dong was deliberately killed by them." Nie Dong and the other two were under Xiong Qixing's orders. When he heard that Nie Dong was dead, he naturally rushed here. Because Nie Dong and the other two were under his orders, his heart was as clear as a mirror. Yixing and the other two were lying. In the face of Xiong Qixing's yelling, Yixing sneered in his heart and said, "Teacher Cui, I'm telling the truth. However, I'm curious as to why Nie Dong would suddenly go berserk. Could it be that he was under someone's orders to kill the three of us, so he pretended to go berserk so that he could kill us on purpose?" Yixing's words immediately shut Xiong Qixing up. If the Academy found out that a senior genius class student had ordered a new student to kill someone on purpose, it would definitely be a big deal. Even if Xiong Qixing's master was the vice dean, it would be difficult for him to escape punishment. However, this alone wouldn't be enough to kill Xiong Qixing. Moreover, Wu Yuan and Ma Bo were Yixing's people now. Yixing naturally wouldn't reveal this matter. It was enough to just warn Xiong Qixing. Nie Dong's actions were indeed strange, but Cui Haoran didn't want to look into it. Even if Yixing was telling the truth, the person who could order Nie Dong to do this was no ordinary person. It wouldn't be good for anyone if this matter was blown out of proportion. Cui Haoran said, "The Academy will investigate this matter. However, no matter what, you will not be able to escape punishment for accidentally killing a fellow student. Yixing, Wu Yuan, Ma Bo, you will be punished to clean the library for a month. Are you willing to comply?" Clean the library. Yixing was instantly overjoyed. The library of the Zishan Academy should contain martial arts manuals, right? Student obeys. Yixing said. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo naturally didn't dare to object. Cui Haoran said, "Well, the library has been cleaned today. From tomorrow onwards, it will be handed over to the three of you for a month. The Academy is clear about rewards and punishments. Students of the ordinary class can receive one upper-grade accumulating star pill every month. The other students have already received it. Only the few of you from the gifted class haven't received it yet. Now, each of you can receive one." While speaking, Cui Haoran had already taken out 5 upper-grade accumulating star pills. Not only Yixing and the other two, but also the 2 students of dormitory 174 who were eliminated from the gifted class had not received it yet. The 2 students walked out of the crowd and received an upper-grade accumulating star pill from Cui Haoran along with Yixing and the other 2. Yixing was overjoyed. Originally, he was about to step into the 6th stage of the martial Dao. With this upper-grade accumulating star pill, he would be able to break through immediately. "Yixing, my brother died because of you. I want to fight with you on the duel stage." As soon as Yixing received the upper-grade accumulating star pill, someone in the crowd called out his name and shouted. Yixing looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young man of about 18 years old coming out of the crowd. The freshmen of the Purple Mountain Academy were generally 15 or 16 years old. There were not many 17 years old. An 18-year-old youth was even rarer. Generally, the students of the advanced class who had been in the academy for 3 years were at this age. For example, Xiong Qixing was now in his early 18 years old. 3 years ago, he entered the Purple Mountain Academy at the age of 15. This person and Niedong did not look alike at all. Yixing did not realize that he and Niedong were brothers. He asked, "Who are you?" "Zhou Jianhong." "He is at the peak of the 6th stage of the martial Dao. He is almost the strongest among all the freshmen of the ordinary class." Zhou Jianhong is a member of the Zhou family of the county city. The Zhou family is a martial arts family with a 9th stage Grand Master. How can he be Niedong's brother? The crowd immediately exclaimed. Niedong came from an ordinary city, while Zhou Jianhong was a descendant of the Zhou family of the county city. It was difficult to connect the two. Although the Purple Mountain Academy had many spots in the county city, there were many martial arts families in the county city. Many of them were Grand Master or Martial Grandmaster level martial arts families. Their descendants were outstanding, so the competition was fierce. 3 years ago, Zhou Jianhong was only at the 5th stage of the martial Dao and did not get a spot. Now, he was at the peak of the 6th stage of the martial Dao. He could be considered one of the strongest students in this cohort. However, he was already 18 years old, so he was too old to enter the gifted class. In the ordinary class, Zhou Jianhong was a tyrant. In just a little over a day, he had already taught 5 students from ordinary cities a lesson. He was famous for his prowess. Zhou Jianhong strode towards Yixing and said, "My mother is a member of the Nie family of Jinshui City. Niedong is my cousin. Although he was mistakenly killed by you, I will still seek justice for him." Yixing did not know whether Niedong was Zhou Jianhong's biological cousin or a distant cousin. In any case, he was not afraid of a fight. Moreover, he was alone in the academy, so he needed a name to intimidate the small fry. Zhou Jianhong's cultivation was very high, so he could use him to make a name for himself. Yixing nodded. "I will fight you." Chapter 95. In the academy, there were 2 types of arenas, one was the duel arena and the other was the life and death arena. The duel arena determined victory and defeat, while the life and death arena determined life and death. Most of the students fought in the duel arena. Only very few people fought in the life and death arena. Only those with great hatred would fight in the life and death arena. Seeing Yixing agree, Zhou Jianhong laughed. He didn't look sad or angry because of Niedong's death. Zhou Jianhong said, "Yixing, since you want to fight in the duel arena, you should have some prizes. Otherwise, it will be a waste of effort." Yixing couldn't help but find it funny. Just now, he said that because of his cousin Niedong's death, he wanted to fight with Yixing on the duel arena. Now, it turned out to be a waste of effort. So what he said just now was just an excuse. His real intention was to make a bet with Yixing. Moreover, Yixing also understood why Zhou Jianhong chose to challenge him when Niedong's death was related to Wu Yuan and Ma Bo. It should be because Zhou Jianhong saw that he was only at the 5th layer of the martial path, the lowest among the 3. Yixing smiled and said, "What do you want to bet on?" Zhou Jianhong's eyes flashed and said, "Star accumulating pill. Whoever loses will give the other party a star accumulating pill." The academy ignored all gambling between students. The world of martial arts was full of danger. The academy was only responsible for teaching and some necessary discipline. It didn't restrict students from fighting in the arena. On the contrary, in order to improve the combat skills of the students, the academy also encouraged the students to duel in the ring and gamble on accumulating star pills. The academy had already distributed them to the students, and whether the students ate them or lost them to others, it didn't matter. Some students sighed, "Zhou Jianhong is going to win another student star accumulating pill." When Yixing heard these words, he immediately reacted. Zhou Jianhong should have more than one accumulating celestial pill on him and spoke up, "It's not easy to enter the battle ring. How can one accumulating celestial pill be enough? I have 3 here, do you dare to bet together? Yixing only had 1 accumulating celestial pill, however, if he used Wu Yuan and Ma Bo's accumulating celestial pills as his gambling capital, it wouldn't be a problem. He only had a cultivation at the 5th heavenly layer, so a high-rank accumulating star pill would be of great use to him. So, why wouldn't he be happy to earn 2 more accumulating star pills? How could Zhou Jianhong put Yixing, a level 5 martial artist, in his eyes? Hearing this, his eyes lit up. Originally, he wanted to challenge Wu Yuan and Ma Bo after defeating Yixing. Of course, the reason was that his cousin Nie Dong had died because of them, and he wanted to seek justice. Now that Yixing was willing to bet 3 pills with him, it was exactly what Zhou Jianhong wanted. It would save him the trouble of having to fight 3 times in a row. Not only would it be tiring, but it would also be troublesome. Zhou Jianhong cracked a smile, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. Alright, I'll bet you 3. After saying that, he took out 3 accumulating star pills to prove that he had them. The dueling platform was not far away, so the 2 quickly went up to the battle ring. Because of Nie Dong's death, the audience for this duel was not only large but also very comprehensive. A large number of students gathered here, as well as many deacons and teachers of the academy. On the battle ring, Zhou Jianhong slowly drew his sword and said with a smile, "Country bumpkin from the county city, remember this young master's name, Zhou Jianhong. Your 3 high-rank accumulating star pills belong to me, Zhou Jianhong." Haha, Zhou Jianhong's smile was very bright, but Yixing also had a smile on his face. Although he didn't smile as brightly as Zhou Jianhong, he was also in a very good mood. Yixing said, "I can't wait to get the 3 high-rank accumulating star pills in your hands." How? You also remember this young master's name, Yixing. No more nonsense, let's get started. Among the students present, except for a few who came from Azure Sky City, no one knew about Yixing's deeds. Seeing him, a 5th-layer martial artist, say the same words as Zhou Jianhong, they all unconsciously pursed their lips. He really doesn't know life from death. Many students secretly said in their hearts. On the battle ring, Zhou Jianhong's smile disappeared. A country bumpkin from an ordinary city dared to be so arrogant in front of him, which really made him angry. The other party was eliminated from the gifted class, so his potential and strength were obviously very ordinary. Zhou Jianhong shouted, "Country bumpkin, I'll let you broaden your horizons. I'll defeat you with 1 sword." As soon as his voice fell, a sword light, like a beam of moonlight, broke through the air in an instant and stabbed in front of Yixing. It had to be said that Zhou Jianhong's swordsmanship was very high. Although this sword did not stab at Yixing's vital points and was not ruthless, it was fast and accurate. The reason why it was not ruthless was because it was not a battle to the death. Zhou Jianhong's goal was to injure Yixing, not to assassinate him. However, just as the sword light was about to stab Yixing's body, Yixing suddenly stepped on the Big Dipper and his body was like a string of afterimages as he retreated backward. The tip of the sword seemed to have stabbed, but it also seemed like it did not. It stabbed at the edge of the afterimage. When Yixing's figure had completely retreated to the side, the crowd realized that the sword did not stab at all. Not only was Yixing not injured, but even his clothes were not torn. This made the faces of the students change. Yixing was only a 5th-layer martial artist, but he actually had such a brilliant movement technique. Zhou Jianhong's expression was very ugly. He said that he would defeat Yixing with 1 sword, but in the end, his sword did not even touch the corner of Yixing's clothes. Swish, cold light flashed and linked together. Zhou Jianhong continued to attack Yixing with his sword, each strike faster than the last. Yixing stepped on the Big Dipper and dodged the attacks by a hair's breadth. He kept counting, 1 slash, 2 slashes, 3 slashes. Soon, he counted to 10 strikes, but his opponent's strikes still missed. Zhou Jianhong did not pursue speed, and each strike was faster than the last. However, because of the anxiety in his heart, the energy in each strike was multiplied. When Yixing counted to 20 strikes, Zhou Jianhong was already panting. Suddenly, he realized that he had been tricked by Yixing. If he blindly attacked, he would die of exhaustion before Yixing could counterattack. Zhou Jianhong immediately withdrew his sword and retreated. He took a defensive stance and shouted, "You only know how to dodge with your movement technique. What kind of hero are you? Try attacking if you have the guts." Seeing that his opponent was no longer tricked, Yixing could only take the initiative to attack. In any case, his opponent had been attacking wildly before and was not in a good state. Furious Steel Fist. Yixing wore a metal glove and punched out. The fist momentum was monstrous and the power was terrifying. The furious steel fist of the perfection of martial arts. Everyone raised their eyebrows at him. Even the older generation of 6th-level martial artists found it extremely difficult to cultivate the low-grade martial arts to the perfection of martial arts. Yixing was so young, but he had cultivated the furious steel fist to the perfection of martial arts. Yixing performed the furious steel fist and punched several times in a row. Zhou Jianhong was shocked by his momentum and was attacked by his fist force. He retreated again and again. Yixing did not want to fight for a long time. After 3 punches, he immediately changed his martial arts technique. His fist turned into 1,000 shadows. Zhou Jianhong only felt a blur in front of his eyes. The sword in his hand was hit to the side. Then, there was a pain in his chest. He was hit by a punch and his whole person was suddenly blasted out of the ring. Yixing came to the edge of the ring and waved to Zhou Jianhong, "You let me win." Student Zhou Jianhong, 3 upper-grade accumulating star pills, give it to me. Zhou Jianhong's face was red. He, a martial artist at the peak of 6th level, was defeated by a 5th-level martial artist from an ordinary city. Not to mention Zhou Jianhong, most of the students around were stunned and shocked. Obviously, they did not expect this result. Many teachers and school deacons were also surprised and nodded repeatedly. They expressed surprise and appreciation for Yixing's strength. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Zhou Jianhong naturally could not act shamelessly. He threw 3 upper-grade accumulating star pills to Yixing and immediately left. He did not want to make a fool of himself here. Yixing got 3 upper-grade accumulating star pills and also returned to the dormitory with Wu Yuan and Ma Bo. He would clean the library tomorrow. He had nothing to do today, so he could go back and use the accumulating star pills to break through the 6th level of martial arts. Looking at Yixing's back, the students were shocked. Most of them had no grievances with Yixing, nor did they have any interest in him. They were all shocked by Yixing's powerful strength. In the hearts of the students in the ordinary class, Yixing was already one of the strongest among the freshmen. Many people even worshipped him. The strong naturally had admirers, and Yixing was one of the strongest among the freshmen. However, Xiong Qixing looked at Yixing's back with hidden malice in his eyes. Although he forced Yixing to the ordinary class, he was completely defeated in the first confrontation with Yixing. Not only was Yixing not killed by Nie Dong and the other 2, but Nie Dong died. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo even turned to Yixing's subordinates. Yixing and the other 2 received a very light punishment. They only had to clean the library for a month. Moreover, Yixing could be said to be doing very well in the common class. Not only did he earn a few more high-grade medicinal star pills, which were beneficial to the improvement of his cultivation, but he also became very famous. Among the students of the common class, he became a popular figure, admired by others, and had boundless glory. All of this made Xiong Qixing feel very uncomfortable. "Yixing, I'll let you be glorious this time. Next time. I'll definitely make you die without a burial place. Xiong Qixing thought fiercely. Dormitory 175. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo stood in front of Yixing. Neither of them took the star-accumulating pill that Yixing brought back. A star-accumulating pill won't improve our cultivation by much, but it's very beneficial to Senior Brother Yi. Senior Brother Yi, please take it. Yixing easily defeated Zhou Jianhong, which made the two feel that Yixing's future was extraordinary. Following Yixing would definitely benefit them in the future. Now, they naturally wanted to show their loyalty. Yixing nodded and said, "All right, I'll accept your star-accumulating pill. In the future, you will definitely benefit from it. You can go out first. I'm going to go into seclusion to break through to the 6th stage of the martial Dao." While he was in seclusion, Yixing was still worried. The two of them were also in the dormitory. Wu Yuan and Ma Bo left the dormitory. Yixing immediately took a star-accumulating pill to refine and absorb it. The medicinal efficacy of the upper-grade star-accumulating pill was many times stronger than that of the middle-grade star-accumulating pill. Yixing immediately felt an incomparably surging star force when he swallowed it. Yixing immediately operated Qingyuan art to quickly absorb and refine it. As time passed, the 5th star ring in Yixing's dantian became brighter and brighter. The 6th star ring was faintly discernible. About an hour later, the 6th star ring was finally completely revealed. Yixing's cultivation had broken through and officially stepped into the 6th stage of the martial Dao. With the breakthrough in cultivation, the restriction on the internal strength in the body instantly disappeared. The internal strength was no longer restricted to the flesh and began to spread to the skin. There was a lot of room for improvement. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.